dimension.
Did your parents see how hard you've worked at this or not yet?
Yeah, they're watching. They know that it's something that I'm not giving up on.
Sometimes I feel like we have to show them rather than tell them because I just feel like they're not listening.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm showing them today.
Right.
Until today, I think at that time they were still like, okay, he's starting his own thing now. Who's going to pay you? How are you going to make money? How are you going to pay this? And it's like, well, I'm doing it by doing these pop-ups, and again, I was like, why would you do that? And it's like, I think for me, the most ironic thing about that is that there's a generation of people that took so many fucking chances and they're traumatized by those chances.
I Am Consciously Curious, a podcast for those that are searching for meaning and fulfillment in their lives. My name is Victor Chan, and I'm on a mission to find out why people do what they do. I've interviewed white-collar to blue-collar, entrepreneurs to passion projects, and life is just too short to not produce meaningful work. Thanks for tuning in. All right, we're live.
Let's
Chef
do it.
Zubair, how are you?
I'm doing great.
It's really,
Thank you so much for
really
having
nice
me.
to meet you. I am tragically late to the Zubair show. You are doing so much.
I appreciate it.
And I got a brief glimpse from David Moore the other day, but over the last week I've been trying to do a deep dive on your journey, and you pick and choose how deep you want to go into your origin story, because I know you've said it so many times and I don't want to have you reiterate it because people can go to other podcasts and listen to it. I thoroughly enjoyed Mike Nagrin's episode, as well as Thomas and Andy's episode and process as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, like we just even briefly touched on, telling the story is so important. I never get tired of telling that story because the biggest thing is we live in Chicago, man. And being a chef in Chicago, or just being in the industry in Chicago by itself is such a blessing. But being able to carve out a little piece of it for yourself and having people even recognize who you are or know who your name is something I never take for granted, because we came from being nobodies. We came from nobody knowing who we were. So I mean, origin story. I mean, it's a wild story, I'm born in India, in Chennai, South Indian parents. So the household is really it's a challenging place growing up, especially I was a 80s baby, so not a lot of feelings, right? It's all about
not a lot of words of affirmation.
Never. Still to this day, probably.
What about physical touch? How about hugs?
No hugs. I'm probably when I was a kid. I'm sure we got hugs. But, it's and it's nothing I hold against them either.
No, was there a time that you, not, maybe resentment's too strong of a word, but where it's like, but why didn't I get this? Like you see, 100%. Especially when you move to the States, it's like, I learned a lot about who I am through my American friends. Oh,
me too. I remember going to my friend's house in junior high. Yeah. And I was like, damn, like your mom tells you she loves you like, every other second, every other minute, bro. I'm like, that must feel good, But I used to laugh. I mean, I'm sure I wasn't laughing about it when I was in junior high, but I thought that was so interesting. The positive reinforcement that my Caucasian friends got at home was amazing. And I'm like, damn, that's pretty awesome. And it's like the second you walk home, it's like, where were you? Where were you? It's like, it's almost sundown. Like, did you eat something? And it's like, it's all coming from love. Yeah. It's all coming from, they're so worried about us. And they, and I think as you get older, from what happened for me was I started to realize when you really start to realize what they've been through. Imagine us,
and that comes. Where does that come from? That because it usually comes late in late in your life.
Yeah, definitely not in your 20s. I think I started to realize it late, early 30s. Yeah, I started to realize it in my late 20s. Kind of just, I think starting to cook was my first realization, because when I started to cook, I was 28 years old, and it was the first time in my life, and I've been working since I was 15, and I was in sales. I was the pioneer brown front of brown dudes in a mall trying to sell you a cell phone. You know what I mean? That was me. That was like 15-year-old me. And so like hustle has always been part of who I am because, you know, we didn't come from any like you know, there's no backing when it comes to in an immigrant household. Like, yeah, if you want to have your apartment, you better pay your rent. You know, if you want to do something, you better get a job. And so I've been working my whole life since I could have a work permit. You know, so as I kind of worked through that and you know, as a South Asian kid, and I'm sure you can, you know, you're in the medical field, and it's like that's all our parents want is for us to be in the medical field, engineering field, lawyers.
I'll never live up to it.
Yeah, me neither. Something professional, you know, and I just never could do that. I'm definitely ADHD. I never did anything for it. Yeah. But I can't sit still, man. Like even doing these things is wild because I'm like
to be able to not look at your phone for an hour and a half.
Yeah, not to look at my phone for an hour and a half. It's really great to talk to somebody and be able to do something. But like if I go to the DMV, my head is on fire. You know, like I can't sit anywhere unengaged, you know? So that's what classrooms for me growing up were like. As soon as that bell rings, I could watch my consciousness just get up and leave the room, you know, because I just didn't, I just wasn't engaged in there. So I hated school my whole life. I just did it for my family. I just did it because I knew I had to. So I settled on like a finance field at DePaul University because I was like, cool. I'll do that.
Were you weighing any other options at the time?
No, man. I mean, I looked into being a doctor and I was like, 10 years of school does not sound fun. You know? And then it's just like, you know.
Were you thinking about how much school you might need? Like, so like that automatically rules out.
The whole aspect of being in school for a long time scared the shit out of me. So like anything that involved more than the bare minimum of schooling was out of the picture. Yeah. But you can't, you know, if there was things like I wanted to be an archaeologist. That was like the first thing I ever wanted to be because I love history. Yeah. And that
makes so much sense. You're such a good history teller.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's that's how I've channeled that love of not doing that initial
at least
love.
Formally, right?
Yeah. But like that has stuck with me my whole life. I'm such a history nerd. I love history. My wife makes fun of me for it. Everybody makes fun of me for it in the sense of like, there's never like a historical tidbit that I won't get out of something. Sure. And I really search for it.
It provides context.
Yes,
exactly. And sometimes more meaning as to why we're doing something.
100%. And so kind of growing up and you go through finance, you go through DePaul, and even DePaul is like, dude, I'm not even good at math. Why am I doing finance? You know what I mean?
Did you put any thought into which school? Because I know I didn't.
I did not.
It was like the constraints were Illinois.
Yeah. I think DePaul gave me like I barely got into DePaul. Okay. I was like the affirmative action, like, you know, I was one of 5 brown people they wanted to give something to. Yeah. And so I got in, and, you know, I had to follow my sister. My sister's 4 years older than me. Okay. She's fucking like a rock star at DePaul. She's an activist. She's even an activist and a rock star now. Works for a really huge interfaith, you know, community called Interfaith America. Okay. That basically channels and sets up these beautiful conversations between different communities of faith. Huh. And she is the person in our family that really like woke us up to political activism, religious activism, and just being who you are. You know? Okay. So following that is really difficult when you go to DePaul because you're like the 18-year-old, you know, brother of this person that's amazing, but I'm such a, you know, degenerate. And you know, being what 18-year-olds are in college, you know. So I basically kind of skid my way. I never really graduated from DePaul officially. Oh, wow. I was there for like 3-4 years trying to do it, you know, just having trouble. I just didn't like it, you know, but I managed to get a job in the banking industry. I worked for JP Chase.
Without a degree?
Without a degree. I just interviewed in, you know, so, and like worked for Northern Trust, and I was a business analyst, and I was like, this is horrible.
That sounds so ambiguous.
Yeah, and it was boring, and it's not me. There's nothing to do with history. And it was just like, what am I doing here? And so naturally when you're in places like that, your mind is gone and you just are a Monday through Friday warrior, and you get obliterated at the end of the week to to numb yourself from the reality setting in of, is this life, you know? And then I got a gift, and the gift was the 2008 market crash of the century, if you will. And I was walked out of my job in Northern Trust, and that was the first moment. And I tell it to every single person that I talk to. I'm like, I've never felt freedom and happiness more than I did that day. And I knew I was the only motherfucker on that street, like happy, that I lost my job. You know, I was surrounded by people crying and grown men just like, holy crap, what just happened? But in my head, I'm just like, amazing. This is cool. I can't do this anymore, Mom, because this failed, you know?
Did you establish any friendships while you were there?
Many. One of my friendships is the current operator owner Marcos Carvajal of Carnitas Surapan. He was.
Whoa.
We worked together at Northern Trust.
What?
Yeah,
that is wild.
We worked together at Northern Trust as business bank like analysts.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
So we used to sit at the cafeteria in suits and shit and like just talking, you know, bullshit about whatever the hell we were going through. But last year was really special for both of us because we both got nominated for a James Beard.
Oh, amazing.
And we texted each other. I'm like, yo, how cool is this? Is that 9 years ago? You know, 10 years ago, more than that. We were in this fucking bank. And now, you know, 10, 12 years later, we're like, we just both got nominated for James Beard. Like, that's pretty freaking cool, you know? So when that happens, it was just such a wild time in my life. And it was something where at 28, it was the first time I really asked myself, like, what do I want to do?
Really? Yeah, I know.
You know?
Yeah, I feel the same
and
way.
not what does my mom want to do or what is my family going to be happy with? I had just gotten married. So, like, my in-laws are like, yo, what are you doing? Like, what, you know, you lost your job.
How are you going
What's
to bounce
happen?
back?
Yeah. And so to bounce back and say, I'm going to take an $11 an hour paying prep cook job at the pump room, everybody just kind of melted, you know? And it's...
but there was time between that and that, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
like how much time passed by and what were you doing to marinate or like to remove yourself from that state of limbo?
Yeah. So initially what happened from 2008, and this is a time where Facebook doesn't really exist the way it does.
Yeah,
Instagram.
Meaning it's harder to reach out to people?
There's no business.
Okay.
There's no monetization of social media yet.
Okay.
Social media is just being introduced.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm dating myself by saying this. But, you know, it's like I was the era where, like, you know, Amazon sold textbooks. Facebook, you needed a college email to get an account. Like, this is shit that people probably will hear right now and be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So it's like coming from that realm, what has always driven me is survival and being self-sufficient and taking a lot of risks or doing whatever the fuck is necessary to survive, you know? So it's like from 2008 to 2013, when I first started cooking, it was a lot of like trying to find out what I wanted to do. And during that development part, we started taking pictures at bars for their Facebook pages. And we started doing kind of what became now is the social media agencies, right?
Yeah.
And so me and a couple friends were just doing that kind of like off the cuff. We think this is something that's important.
Yeah.
I should have probably stuck with it. Maybe I'd be making a lot more money, but I don't regret it at all because that's what brought me into a restaurant and brought me into a bar where I went to set up this food photography one day, and I just felt the rumbling and the rhythm and the noise and the feeling of a kitchen and, you know, the feeling of service, the banging of the pots, the dishwasher running, and everything starts kind of falling into rhythm. Plates coming out, plating, fryers frying something, you know, so it's just kind of started to activate in my brain. And it's like, you know, when you watch those freaking, what was it? The Marvel movie, man, it starts taking over your brain.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, Avengers.
Yeah, you know, like Venom, right? It starts just kind of keeps
okay.
coming out, right?
Yeah,
and I'm getting these urges. It's like I should cook,
like but then I'm like vibrating. As like with
I'm like I should cook, but then I'm like, no, you're not gonna fucking cook. It doesn't pay. What are you gonna go back to school?
So like
for
the
it?
logic part of you.
Yeah, it was just pushing back of like, you're not gonna go tell your wife you're about to go cook.
And what does your wife do?
My wife is so smart. She is now a change management director for BDO in their AI field. So she is. I have no idea what that means, but I've practiced this so many times. No, we have a 7-year-old son, and when he was like 4, we would hear her. You know, we were living in a much smaller place. And he would be like, Baba, like, what is mama talking about? You know, and like we're cuddling in bed in the morning, you know, talking about just random shit with my 4-year-old. And I'm like, I have no idea, bro. You know, and, but granted, like, you know, she's the reason I'm here. She's the smartest person I know.
Yeah.
She's the most giving person I know. She is the foundation of our family, man. And so she has been, and she's gone through her own journey that is, as crazy as mine. You know, she was a freaking high school teacher, went to the CPS, super smart, obviously, graduated from Loyola, but like saw that she wasn't going to fulfill what she wanted to do. And she had to kind of do the same thing. She pivoted. And back then, if you don't do 5 years at a school, you have to pay your $100,000 in loans. So that's how they get you, right? But she said, fuck that. Fine, I'll pay it. You know what I mean? And kind of counts on herself and goes through her own journey of the past, almost the same as what we've been going through at the restaurant, is that she has built herself up to now something that is something really, really commendable. And honestly, without her, I'm not sitting here.
This is all while being a mom.
While being a mom, partner. Doing most of it at home. And, managing my parents and everything. Her parents, she's an unlimited source of energy. And she doesn't know that. You know what I'm saying? She doesn't give herself enough credit for that.
Sure.
But without somebody like that, there is no Zubair Mohajir, there is no Wazwan, there's no Mira, there's no anything, because she allowed me to work in those early days when I didn't take anything home, and allowed me to just scrap, whatever money I could to make sure that we paid bills, paid rent to survive, So during that transition period where I was finally came to, I'm hey, I threw away too many applications for Le Cordon Bleu in the garbage. Okay. Where I was you know what, I kind of want to do this. And so she was the first person and only person that I really needed
an approval or validation,
or be on my side about it, because she is my wife and she's my partner.
Was there ever a time where she actually pushed back?
Never, man.
That's wild.
No, that's the thing. And she had so many opportunities too. But she wholeheartedly was follow your dream, I got your back.
Well, yeah, I remember, whether it's going to California,
or
letting you go stage in Bangkok, she was just you got to go do this.
Go do it.
That's so wild.
Yeah, it's wild. And it's just, I remember in that moment when I was just I think I'm going to do this full time. And she's do what you got to do, knowing that we're not going to be making a crap ton of money from doing that.
Maybe she knows that you don't half-ass things.
I hope so. I think by now, yeah, definitely. I think she probably saw how serious I was about it, and I had never been so passionate about something in my life up till that point.
If you were to provide context, did you guys meet in prior to college or in
we
college?
Met. She was 19, I was 23. Very Bollywood, bro. We met at a wedding.
Why is that Bollywood? That's Bollywood.
We met at a wedding. Oh. So we met. That's the dream of a lot of brown dudes.
That's why they go to
girls.
Weddings?
Yeah.
Oh.
When you're single, you go to a wedding, you're you think you're in a movie. You know what I'm saying? You think you're in a Bollywood movie and you're going to grasp the eyes of somebody across the room. Who's that? I was meant to be here to meet my wife, Cue song, everybody goes into organized dancing. No, but her cousin was her cousin at the time got married to my college roommate, so that's how we met. And it just kind of happened. It was very organic. I wasn't I remember being very mindful in that part of my life where I wasn't looking for anything.
It's usually when it happens.
Yeah, I'm very impulsive like that throughout my life, where it's just you just kind of go with the flow and not take for granted the people that the universe or God, whatever you believe in. For me, it's God, but the universe too. It will bring people into your life that are just meant to be in your life, and without them, you are nobody, or without them, you're in a ditch somewhere. Because that's probably where I would be. You know what I'm saying? It's just without her, there's no me. And without my son now, it's it's
but on the way here, I was thinking about all the people, all the touch points that you've had. To be here.
100%. And so it's so important to realize yes, you may do something yourself, but you're not doing it yourself. There's people or surround you that make sure that you're able to be able to give that energy. And we can never take that for granted, and we can never have our egos in a place where, oh yeah, I built this. Nah, we built this, and that's so important, because I feel a lot of people lose that sometimes. It's I always tell a lot of chefs, everybody that is part of my team and things like that. It's man, we celebrating
together is so much more fulfilling too.
I needs to be out of the conversation. It's always about we, but it was such a humbling moment, because when I went to Le Cordon Bleu for 2 weeks, I realized it was no different than an undergrad where I'm like, oh crap, they're going to get me for 50 grand in debt. And I'm going to graduate and get an $11 paying job at a restaurant. So there was a very smart woman. Her name is Patricia. And I remember I was frustrated about it. I'm like, dude, I was a good cook before that. Like, I love cooking. My mother is a big cook. So I grew up in a household that is all about food, you know? So I was frustrated. I'm like, how are they giving us 8 hours to do one freaking dish in this thing? Like, what am I really learning here? You know, yes, sure, knife cuts, whatever. But this woman looked at me and she was like, why don't you just go work at a restaurant? And I'm like, yeah, like, why don't I just go work at a restaurant? You know what I mean? And it was such a profound statement. I'm like, yeah, why am I at culinary
Was this
school?
a one-on-one or was this into the whole class?
Bro, no, we were just wrapping up the day at the locker. You know what I mean? And I was just like, and it's culinary school. I'm like 28 years old, wearing all this like white chef gear.
I guess what would you think other people are getting from it?
I think if you're going into culinary school at a younger age, or maybe something where you just absolutely have no experience whatsoever or have ever done it, sure, you'll benefit. But after being in restaurants, man, restaurants do it for you. You don't need...
That's what I keep hearing.
Yeah, I mean, like, you don't need a culinary degree to be a chef. You don't need a culinary degree to do anything in the restaurant industry. Yeah, does it help knowing the French mother sauces? Yeah, sure. But like, why are the only sauces we're learning French mother sauces? You know what I mean? Sure, it's a French culinary school, but like, I'm Indian. Like, we're not down to 4 sauces. We got thousands, you know? So I think learning the basics is really important.
Yeah.
And there's no better way to do that than actually working at a restaurant, because you're being taught by chefs. You're being taught by cooks who know the real beat of a restaurant and will prepare you better for your future if you work at a restaurant for what's coming, and not this fabricated, controlled environment of a culinary school where everything's, you know, calm and like staged for you.
Sure.
And you watch, you know, TV together. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, it creates a different perception of what real life is.
Yeah.
So for me, I went to Pump Room.
Yeah.
And it was a Jean George restaurant that was in Chicago. Really beautiful dining room. I still think it's one of the most beautiful.
I actually didn't know. I looked it up where it was, and
public hotel.
A friend recently just left there. She was the artist in residency at the Ambassador.
Yeah.
And she, you know, had not a falling out, but like maybe they had different visions. The hotel's different from the restaurant and different visions. And she held her going away party in that bar.
Wow.
It was beautiful. It's
the
a beautiful
library
bar.
or the main room?
The main room.
Yeah.
Not the one,
Those
not the library with the fireplace.
Yeah.
The other one.
That's a legendary room, man.
Yeah. All the photo portraits in there.
Yeah.
And
Sinatra's table. All
exactly.
Sorts of stuff.
It's wild. See, like, there's so much potential. It's just like, what are they doing with this?
Nothing. It's awful. Yeah, I was there for 2 years, man. It's a beautiful place. I learned a lot.
Okay.
Got my ass kicked a lot, and just, you know, overcame so much. But that place and the people that I worked with, especially all the chefs, I literally keep in touch with every day.
Wow.
Like, that's one of the few places that's been like that. You know, like, we all still talk. We're all friends.
What do you think that is? Is it just serendipity that it was the person, or do you think there was something about the environment that led to that?
I think it was right place, right time, the right group of people together.
Yeah.
And we cared so much. And not only just about how now everybody, any, you know, new hire or anything is so eager to create a dish.
Yeah.
Right. And because that's what they see. It's like they watch Chef's Table, they watch all these things, and they're like, and that's great. It's great to have that hunger. But like, man, you gotta spend some time and really master, you know, the basics, and really master cooking. And I was, you know, I've been told 25 plus times, Dad, this dish sucks. We're not going to do that. And you can't be disheartened by that. You have to use that as fuel to continue to drive yourself to be better, to learn more things, to get better at what you do.
And that's hard. That's hard to not take it personally, because
100%.
you are pouring your heart and soul into this.
Absolutely. And the taking it personally part is where there's a lot of divide these days. You know, it's like, and I think that's the challenge for us sitting in the seats where we sit, is to make that conversation more collaborative and less stringent and less
It's not punitive. We all have a common goal.
Exactly. Just because we were spoken to a certain way doesn't mean we speak to others a certain way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's very important to me.
I watched the Chef's Table episode with Guggen, and when he was telling his chef, this is like, taste this, like when it was fried on just one side,
right?
And it's showing him like, this is why we can't put this out,
right? Yeah, exactly. That place is wild.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, we will. But it's just I think originally what you asked was how did people react to it, and it was just almost like sound the alarm reaction in the family, because it was just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're too old. Just restart. Don't pursue something that is just something is going to be just another thing, or what I mean? There's so many questions because honestly, they had every right, because up till that point, I was a very volatile, inconsistent individual that never cared about anything as much as I care about this. And cooking for me was, and I make this correlation a lot, but the first time I walked into my first shift at Pump Room, it was like fucking Avatar. I'm sure you've heard that, right? So it's like, I say that because I literally felt that. I felt the ponytail going into the tree type shit. You know what I mean? And like sinking into what that was.
Really?
I swear to God, man, I got chills my first day as a fucking prep cook.
Yeah.
It's not like I was doing anything monumental.
Almost like a coming home. Like
I was shaving fucking Brussels sprouts for 3 hours. You know what I'm saying? But like when I walked in with a cook shirt and an apron, and I was like, I'm starting this job, and that was like a monumental moment for me, because I finally was starting something I wanted to, and not something that I was doing for somebody else. I was doing it for me. And that was really profound for me. And I've never let that feeling go. And every day since that moment, because we count our blessings, man, to be able to do this stuff.
Well,
right?
you previously said how, when people start out in the kitchen, you want to create, you want to make things, and you have to put in your time to get to that level.
Yeah.
And when you do want to make things, though, sometimes at that level, you're met with a certain level of red tape, or just like, no, maybe no means not yet, but you're now in a position to make these like yes or no executive decisions.
100%. And I mean, even though I'm in the position to do that, our menus are still very collaborative. So it's like when I recognize somebody has the right intentions, but is still very, very hungry, the worst thing you can do is turn that off. The best thing you can do is show them the way, with empathy, with compassion, and be like, hey, this is not there yet, but let me show you what can get there, and blow their mind with something else. And that's how you keep feeding that hunger, and they get that because you treated them with respect, you spoke to them with respect, you didn't just like dismiss, hey, go set up your fucking station. You know what I mean? Anytime, and I've had cooks that are randomly there, and I could see the excitement. They're like, yo, chef, I want you to taste something. I'm never like, I don't have time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why? You can't. And so it's like, yeah, sure, let's taste it. Shoot, that's pretty wild. You know what? That actually might work on this other dish. And when that happens, they're like, holy crap, that component's mine. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's the best thing in the world. I mean, right now I work with Chef Jacob at the Lilac Tiger in the Coach House, and I have never worked with anybody that I am more in sync. It's like, I love everything about him. Has the best head on his shoulders, but he's hungry. He is focused and just always pushing the boundaries, and always just like the right mindset. Nothing gets him down. Nothing ever affects his.
Yeah, he's even keeled.
Yeah, he's even keeled. Any random things that happen is, the Lilac Tiger is like a 12-item menu. Coach House is an 8-course meal. Me and him are basically beasting all that prep just ourselves every single week. After today, we're gonna go. It's snowing out. We called off all the cooks. I'm like, yo, it's me and you in this line, and we're gonna prep up this via Valentine's Day because it's sold out. You know what I mean? It's like we just know what the other's capable of, and it's such a magical thing when you have somebody like that you work with, because he's the reason I'm able to see my family more.
Yeah.
He's the reason I can spend time with my kid. And we pay that back to each other. Like, he's like, hey, chef, can I got something with my wife coming on. I'm like, go do it. We've gotten rid of this, like, hey, did you put your request off in for this? You know what I mean? Like, You know what I mean? Like with certain people, you don't need that because we feed each other and we make sure we take care of each other.
And you understand this professional courtesy as well.
Exactly. And it's like, hey, we make sure that both of us are good and we make sure that we can be there for our spouses. And there's nothing more profound than that, you know? So those types of collaborative existence are so important. The same goes with Rishi at Mira, you know? So it's just, when I started at Pump Room, it was just like the most profound thing ever, man. It was the first step and I've never lost that feeling, you know?
And that was because of a friend that you knew that got you in there?
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Was that another example of shooting your shot?
That woman that said, go work there was leaving there and she was a prep cook. And she was like, you should just go work here. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And so I did a stage. They liked what I was, you know, about and basically got, you know, even now or back then, it's like, it doesn't take much to get a restaurant job. You know what I'm saying? You got you have a body that can move around and like you can do stuff. Like you're hired, you know. We'll teach you stuff. I literally didn't know anything, you know. I didn't know like, you know, techniques and things like that. I was 28. I was the oldest person in the kitchen. I've always been the oldest person in the kitchen in every place that I've worked in. So it was always like, who's this dude? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then
it's like, and that's a different type of like competitiveness.
Yes.
In the sense of you're competing with yourself, whereas like there's a more immature competitiveness when you're younger. Absolutely. Of like this external comparativeness to it.
Yeah, and that's why I love. There's parts of the old way of doing things that were good, and of course there's a lot of bad back then. But I think in those types of kitchens, like, you know, your typical French kitchens, if you will, Pump Room works for me because of the people, but like it was that competitiveness, not only with yourself, but we had a really healthy competitiveness with our teammates, you know, where things like, hey, things like I've never even thought about, like dudes would just put up a stopwatch and time how long it took them to cut a squash and time how long it took them to set up their station,
gamifying it.
And then they would be like, every day I'm going to try to shave 5 minutes off, and that's what drove them, you know. And I was like, that's pretty cool, like that's pretty dope. And so I took on that in the sense of like just challenging. You have to motivate yourself, man. And for me, since day one, because of my background and where I came from and being in the finance world and how much people talk a lot of shit in the finance world and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And so like,
shit about what though?
Just, you know, it's like that typical happy hour small talk question. Where do you see yourself
so
in
superficial,
5 years?
I know.
You know, and I'm like, bro, you're not even thinking about tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I would always make up some bullshit ass answer when I was in those, you know, meetings and like happy hour situations and like the whole, you know, in the corporate America kind of setting. But I remember when I started cooking, people were like, where are you going to be at 5 years? I'm like, I'm going to have my own place in 5 years, you know? And I was like, for me, going into that world, I was telling myself, I'm going to shut my mouth for 5 years and I'm just going to work and I'm going to absorb from places that I feel that are important to my development internally. So that's why Pump Room was like the best first 2 years. Like I couldn't have started anywhere else. A really funny side note before Pump Room is that I staged at fucking Alinea, you know?
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. I staged at Alinea as in between. And this was so technically the first professional kitchen I ever stepped into was a stage at Alinea.
That's wild.
And I was like just bull rushed in the sense of like mentally I was like, holy shit, how the fuck did they say yes to this, you know? And it's like I spent 2 16-hour days doing everything that they asked me to do, and it was the wildest, you know, 48 hours where I was like, holy crap, because that was the impulsive me. It's like, I want to see what the top of the mountain looks like, because I want to get there.
What year was that?
That was like right before, like beginning of 2013. So like, you know, Simon Davies, Elixir Creative. Yeah. He was the exec sous at that time. You know?
I'm going to have his burgers one day.
Dude, burgers in Burgundy sounds pretty awesome. He's such a dope dude. I think, you know, I think that's the funny part about my journey, man, is like the first time I got to like meet him, I was like, dog. And I didn't call him a dog, but I was like, chef, you know. We sat after my stage and like, you know, it was just a hilarious conversation because it was just, you know, Alinea, like just craziness, and just the requirements of working at Alinea was wild, you know, because it was just like, oh cool, oh you're married, oh Okay. All right. You have personal relationships. Okay, cool. You know, it's just like, I'm like, yeah, bro, I'm a freaking person. You know what I mean? God bless him. He's amazing. But it was that mode, you know, they were in the mode where, and they still are, like, and that's why I respect that place so much.
Hyper-focused, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Well,
it's monumentally,
I feel like, is it competitive to get a stage in Alinea? Maybe these days? I don't know. It's like, back then, like, you just walked in, like, you just got a stage?
stage with no experience. No, I don't think it's competitive.
It's not competitive?
I don't think so. They gave my ass a challenge. I didn't have any experience on my shit.
That's great.
Yeah. It's like, well, because it's better to teach things to somebody. It's better, you know, everyone's heard this whole whatever it is, you know, it's better to teach somebody new good habits than it is to break old.
Sure.
And I feel like a place like Alinea, man, is...
So you think they were saying no to certain people then?
I don't think so. Oh. I think they bring people in, they throw the day at them, and they see how they react to that day. And if they freak out, then you don't belong there.
Sure.
If you're even keel and you're like taking everything as it comes and giving it your all and running and like hustling and having that sense of urgency, then they're like, we can work with this person. We can teach him things. We can teach her things. You know what I mean? And I really solely feel that's why they've been the stalwarts that they are, you know? And I know people talk shit about Alinea and all that in the sense of like...
Overratedness or...
I mean, I've heard people go there, and I think I've heard you talk about it as well, right?
And this is just, I haven't even experienced Alinea. It's coming from the sense of like, wow, to maintain that level of prestige over the amount of time that they've held it.
Yeah.
The 3 stars, this long? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. But like, you know, for me, when I was there for 48 hours, I was like, it was another one of those moments. I was like, this is awesome. Like the sense of urgency, the focus of every single cook, everything from the guy picking the fucking basil, the sense of urgency he had to get through that bushel, to a sense of urgency of chef on the line, plating, calling, to the sense of urgency of the expo. That's not easy to put together every day for 15 years now, and all the while doing it at that high level, right? Consistency and like that whole, I mean, if you look at how many of the chefs right now that are in the industry that came out of that kitchen that are doing amazing things, like that's, you know, that's legacy. That's what you teach in the world, and that goes to other places. And they themselves have also improved over time, right? It's like the whole industry has improved over time a little bit.
It's a callback to Phil Jackson's quote of like, you're only as successful as your last successful act. And to continue at that high level, to be that inventive over and over again.
Yeah, I will never be the chef, or even as an entrepreneur and as a small business owner now, to ever talk down upon anybody else's business or anybody else's accomplishments like that, because that is hard. Especially just to even be open is hard. To do it at that high of a level globally is a next, you know, that's like next level.
And they still have time to pay homage to, I remember like Charlie Trotter's restaurant recently. That's so cool.
Which is great, you know. But for me, that experience was also a very important experience for me to lay down I want that. I needed that in my life. I needed the structure. I needed the whole aspect of like setting up your station. This is what you have to do. That I never had that before.
At that time, what were some other, besides Trotters, like that were in your purview of like, this is where I might want a stage?
There was nobody else.
Oh, okay.
Because it was Alinea. Alinea was the top of the mountain.
Fine dining.
Alinea was like, you can't go and work there. I'm like, watch me. You know, watch me go get a stage there at least. You know, and it's like, that's one of those things. People are like, how'd you get in, right? It's like, bro, you just gotta apply. You know, my mantra is like, you got to ask.
Yeah, I know.
If you don't ask, you don't know. Yeah. And I've lived my life like that, and it's been very, you know, it's worked for me.
But I have a feeling that they can sense your hunger.
100%.
And your commitment to the process.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You're like humility.
Yeah. I mean, you know, grand scheme of things, like Simon Davis probably didn't even remember me because of how many people go through that place, right? And but he was so gracious about it when we met, and he was like, that's wild. And I'm like, yeah. And then it was like a really cool moment, because I'm like, hey, I'm proud of you. You left that place, you started your own pop-up. That's where I came from, you know what I mean? And so it's really cool to connect with people like that going back to like being a nobody, and seeing them then, and then seeing them later when you are a little bit of a somebody, and them being like, oh shit, you're that one dude. You know,
salute.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, I'm still here, dog. But you know, for me, it was like those are one of those moments that it really is like setting the foundation of how you carry yourself in this profession. You know, without those experiences that are sometimes difficult, sometimes traumatic for some people, you don't have that experience that continues to mold you as not only a chef but as a person, and eventually as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner. You know, so when I reached my ceiling at Pump Room, I was like, hey, it's time for something new. I was like, you know what, I want to go. California sounds really cool.
Do you remember, before we go to California, some of the tasks that you were tasked with? Because in my head, I'm thinking of like the Forks episode from The Bear.
Oh, geez.
So, like, did they give you like menial tasks to do?
Pump Room?
No, at Stage,
No, it was like cleaning salsify. It was
what is that?
Salsify is like this really cool root vegetable that, you know, at the time they would do a chandelier that looked like a wooden chandelier. Oh, but they weaved in this edible salsify.
So would there be a chandelier at every table?
Yeah, and you would have to pick out what's the edible part. You know, it's wild, bro. Who the fuck does that? You know what I mean? That's why they are who they are. And I think the other one was, and I didn't know why they had me on. They had the newest dude in the kitchen walking around with this can of like liquid nitrogen, refilling the line. And I'm like, am I the best person for this job? Like, I've never been in a quiet kitchen before, you know? I remember when I put away a sheet tray, and the sheet tray maybe dropped, you know, like 1 inch.
Yeah.
Mike Bagali looked at me like he was wanting to fucking murder me, you know? That's another dude I want to see in person one day, just because I just loved that. I loved that interaction with him. I thought that was the fucking coolest thing in the world. I was like, damn, because he was known as like Lanilia's like bulldog, you know what I mean? Like he was firm, and he was like a dude that just demanded excellence. And my ass was giddy that I was there, and I loved it. I was like,
you're too giddy.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I shouldn't drop a sheet tray an inch. How dare I, you know? But then they had me on like the apple string, like tying apple strings around the edible balloon, you know? Like, I'm just like, this is a lot of trust for somebody who just walked in here. But that's the thing, right? It's like you put people in the fire and you see how they perform. Yeah. And you see how that goes. And that's how you test people. You know, I stage people like that. I'll give them some crazy shit to do. Not to just see if they can do it well, to see how they react to doing it. You know, if it's something wild, or if it's something like, hey, yeah, let's do this whole case of thing. And they'll be like, you know, if there's like a reaction, or if there's like
is there necessarily a right way to react? But I mean, there's probably a wrong way to react.
There's definitely a wrong way to react. Entitlement is a huge thing. Like, well, I don't want to just peel potatoes. And I'm like, right. You don't even know how to peel potatoes, bro. You know what I mean? It's just like it's giving those menial tasks, because a lot of times, a lot of beautiful dishes can't happen if you don't clean your potatoes right, or if you don't toast your spices well, if you don't, you know, do the basics. The first step of taking care of an ingredient comes from that, you know. So for us, it's like a really great, you know, for me, my time in Alinea, it was very, very short. It was a stage, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't take it forward because their chef's training program was like, you know, at the time, like $11 an hour, and like, I'm married, man. I can't go back to my wife and say $11 an hour.
But I'm at Alinea.
Yeah, you know, it's like 28 years old, and that rode with me for a while. I was like, should I have done that?
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Interesting.
That rode with me for a while after that, but I just, you know, kind of trusted the process. I was like, no, I can't do that, and I ended up for like $4 more at Pump Room. But, you know, Pump Room, I basically was able to climb really fast in the sense of just putting my head down, working really hard. And I went from prep cook to sous chef in like 2 years. You know, and so it was something that, again, along the whole way, it was just this flood of learning how to cook fish, learning all of the things that I still do now. And that's why I love the people that I worked with there, because there was 20-year-olds on that kitchen. You know, shout out Phil Tour, shout out Justin, shout out Verlord, all these guys that we worked around. We just always uplifted each other, taught each other, challenged each other in the best way, not demeaning, not putting each other down, but like really like almost in a sports way, you know, and like everybody was just trying to push, because we knew that if that person got better, then everything would get better for all of us, right? And that's why I'm a sports fanatic. One of the things I lost when I started cooking was the ability to watch primetime sports, but I love the team mentality of attacking something as a team and living or dying as a team.
But was that culture embedded from above, or do you felt like it was just so within the kitchen?
It's always been my life, man. I grew up in India, obsessed
but it's more
with cricket.
It's the group.
It is, yeah.
It's the group, right? Yeah. It takes more than one to tango,
exactly.
Right? So it's like, where does that come from?
I think it stems back to just being an immigrant. Like, you come here with your family, you're in a team.
But how does the team get to that point? How do you get the team to buy into that as an operator now, 100%, right?
Yeah,
like you can lead the ship, but they're eventually going to take over, right?
Nah, I mean, they'll try, but if you lead the ship properly, then there is no mutiny. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, or in the sense of like, how do you build a culture they want to continue to be a part of?
Yeah, 100%, and that's something that David and I have talked about so many times, and something that we really worked on since he joined, because it was something that, when you're in pop-up mode, it's very pirate ship. There's people coming in and out. There's no structural, like, solid team. But with one of the transitions of going from pop-up to a restaurant is now that you have to have culture. You have to have some sort of team mentality. And that's why I think me and David always, in the madness of all of it, always try to find one-on-one time with just us to make sure that we're there for each other, to make sure that we are, if we're mad about something, we could be mad about something. If we're happy about something, we could be happy about something. But it's between me and him, and it's something that we, commit to make sure that we're good. And we're good leading these people and leading a group of people that we care about. We care about every single person that it works with us, all we do is think about their well-being and what we can do for them. And that's what the seats that we sit in, and it's a privilege to be in that seat, and you can't take that for granted, and it's never about you. And that's why I'm always like, who cares what we do? It's what we do for our people that matters the most, because without them, we can't do what we do, So it's super important for that.
Yeah. Did you, when you took on the sous role at Pump Room, did you feel ready for it?
No. No, I've never felt ready for anything.
But there was an opening, and then you took it.
Exactly. You take opportunity. So I navigated the food world like I would navigate a resume building in the finance world. It's about where you work, what you did, and who's on your resume. So my first places, and I didn't fly around every 6 months. I attacked it like a job would. I have to spend 2 years somewhere, right, to learn properly, to give them my time, because I value their time, in order to learn what I can from that place and reach a ceiling. I was never somebody who went into someplace for 6 months and I was out.
Simply to get a name,
Yeah, that happens so much now. 6 months is like one time I had a cook be like, "Hey chef, it's my 6-month anniversary today." I was like, "What do you want? you want a freaking party?" You know what I mean? It's like, maybe 1 year, sure. Congratulations, but 6 months, bro. Let's set the bar a little bit higher.
Okay.
But for me, it was first job was Pump Room, and really worked my way up. And I wasn't definitely not ready for it, but I took it because I was like, yeah, I want to be a sous chef here. And that now, the next spot I will go to, I was able to say I was a sous chef for the Pump Room by Jean George. You know, and I was given like $2 million worth of like, basically private parties for the hotel that I had to manage. And it was hilarious because in these meetings, they'd be like, "We have a full chef team doing it." And it was like, there's no chef team. It's just me, So my sous chef time there was wild. Like, I never saw my wife. I would basically wake up at 5 a.m. She's sleeping. Go to work. I would come back at midnight, 1 a.m. She's still sleeping. So I'd take a nap basically for 3-4 hours and I'd go right back to work. I did that for a long time. And it almost brought us to separation because it was just not a place to be. And that was something that was like, okay, that's where you know where to draw the line. You can never do something, no matter how much you care about it, is your work, that's going to separate or diminish your relationship with your partner, or your family. And so that was the first time I felt that. I was like, wait a second, no, this is more important. And so that's why, because of where we were as in our relationship, I was like, hey, let's move to California, and have a break. I can work anywhere, Rida. Like, I was like, cooking you can do anywhere. So very naively, I took stages at Otium, unfortunately, which closed in LA. And then I went to the complete polar opposite, Bouchon in Napa, and spent a week doing those things. Went to Otium first. Cool. Still LA. LA's a great food city, yeah, but like, it was a great restaurant. Timothy Hollingsworth is an awesome person, but the offer was like $14 an hour to live in LA. I'm like, how do you do that?
So after the stage, you were offered a role.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. And I was like, okay, well, I'll think about it. And then I go to Busan. And have you ever been to Napa?
No, I haven't had the pleasure.
You need to.
Yeah.
Just driving into Napa, when you arrive in Napa, you're just like, where the fuck am I?
Yeah, you call it Narnia.
It's a magical moment. And it's just nothing prepares you for the green in the hills, like how green it is. Nothing prepares you for the first morning you wake up and it's deafening sounds of birds.
Were you into wine at that time already?
No. I've never been into wine, honestly. I'm brown, so it's like a more other spirits that I've, kind of been into. But wine was never really a thing. My wife is really into wine. Okay. I think wine really goes great with food. But as cooks, we would always like have fun with the sommeliers, because we would just be like, sommeliers would be like, oh, what does this taste like to you? I'm like, oh man, this is like a fresh bottle of tennis balls. It's like the sous chefs and I would just, or cooks and I, and every time we would just try to say the most egregious
outlandish things,
with a serious face, just to mess with the somms. And they knew kind of, they're like, these motherfuckers, they can't say shit in front of the chef, So we would mess around. But, for me, pulling into Napa was like, holy crap, like, and during my stage, I kind of saw all of it. When you walk into Thomas Keller's kitchen, the first thing you see is the clock, and you see what you saw in the bear.
Oh, really? That's a Thomas Keller thing, huh?
That's a Thomas Keller thing, my friend.
Cool.
That is a TKRG. That is a OG legendary thing. When you walk into the restaurant.
With that same, what's the quote?
Sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And it's underneath the clock. So you know when you arrived, and do you have sense of urgency to attack your day? And when I saw that, again, it was one of those monumental, it's like walking into Linnea, when you're walking into fucking Thomas Keller, and my biggest experience from that is when I was moved in and it was a long drive, 30 hours, me and my wife, we're just walking around Napa and we're walking by the Finesse store, which is where he sells his books and like tweezers and all the tools and everything. And then I double take and I'm like, is that a cardboard cutout of Thomas Keller in whites, or is that Thomas Keller just standing in the crispest whites in the fucking window? And my wife saw my face change because it was freaking Thomas Keller, just stoic, like a G, you know what I mean? Like just there. And I'm like, I gotta go say what's up to this dude, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And so for me, it's like I'm like an anti-fanboy, the only person I would freak out for is Michael Jordan. And I'm sure you know why.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it soon. But like, I really respect people that do amazing things where I don't want to be the guy that gets dismissed as a fan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I never take pictures with famous people if I ever meet them. I always thank them. I always introduce myself.
I wouldn't know what to say. I don't know. Like, thank you? I don't know. Like, what do you say?
I went up to Thomas Keller.
It's like, nice to meet you.
Hey, chef. I moved here from Chicago to work at Busan. I really appreciate the opportunity. And he was like, thank you so much for, where are you coming from? He doesn't know who the fuck I am. You know what I mean? He's like, thank you. He's like, where are you coming from? And I'm like, Chicago. And what I loved about him is that his attention went immediately to my wife. And he goes, so this guy dragged you all the way here from Chicago, huh? He's like, how are you doing? How is the move for you?
Yeah.
What is your name? Rida. This. I'm like, no other chef has ever done that. Ever cared. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm sure still that dude doesn't know who the fuck I am, which is fine. But that's how he spoke to everybody, 2 days later, we were at his holiday party. TKRG is a beast. There's hundreds of people there.
Sure.
Me and my wife don't know anybody. We're, had a couple of friends. That's about it. But we're not by anybody. We're standing at a high top in this massive place in Napa. And Thomas Keller comes up to our fucking high top, remembers her name, remembers my name.
Wow.
Asks us how the move is so far. It's been a couple of days. Everything good. You settled in. You get excited to start. And then kept on going on his way. And I was like, dude, he didn't have to do that. How many people would do that? Right?
Not that many.
Right? And it's like...
And as someone who's in a position as an operator...
Yeah.
Do you try to remain present every time you meet someone new now?
1,000%, bro. The amount of people that now have become family who used to be guests is monumental. Like, there's people that walk into the coach house and I'm giving hugs to like 8 people in a row. Because I'm like, where you been? What's good? How's the kid? How's this one? It's like, it's more than just you came to buy food from me.
Yeah.
It's that connection for me, and like anybody, there was crazy things about that kitchen and there was really great things about that kitchen. But that group was the first time they prioritized chefs having weekends where we got 2 days off in a row as much as possible. That's something I implemented, at Wazwan, and when we started basically in every spot, like trying to give people off 2 days in a row so they can have a weekend, they can have something. And I never saw people care for people like that, So there was a lot of teaching there as well, and a lot of challenges. I mean, the Bouchon is a monster, 1,000 covers at dinner, 500 covers at lunch. And when you go through that, doing anything after that is easy.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
When you go through the pressure of running, like there was no, hey, I'm clocking in, getting my coffee, I'm going to go set up my station now. Nah, when you walked in through that door, your sense of urgency, you are running to back up your partner that opened up the station for you during lunch.
Yeah.
You're getting anything that you can for them. And then you're thinking about your 1,000 cover dinner that you're setting up. And there's no closing of the restaurant. So it's just a smooth transition of now dinner is on and it's boom, you're in it. And there's nothing slowing down until the end of service at 1 a.m. And it's not only that, after the last call, you're deep cleaning every night and soaping and doing all of that. And so when you get out of work, you're gassed. But it's one of the most fulfilling things in the world. Like I felt so fulfilled. Every day I felt so like we did that. You know what I mean? And that's what I think is so important these days as well. It's to have that love for the game, love for the passion of that. This is part of what we do, and it's the toughest part is when wintertime, right? When it's slower. To continue to motivate yourself like that is very difficult. So having that self-motor, I think is the most important part of all. If I didn't have the motor that I have, I wouldn't be here, to really drive yourself through the good times and through the bad times. And for me, that was a learning time. And I learned a lot from that place. And honestly, if it wasn't for that fire in 2017 that kind of uprooted us.
The Tubbs fire?
Yeah, the Tubbs fire that... I don't even know if we would be here. I would have stayed in California. Like me and my wife took a drive around Napa. We're like, oh, it's windy like Chicago here.
Tell
didn't
me,
realize what was happening.
Did you have a place to stay? Like, was it Airbnb in at that time?
We had an apartment while we were living there at a year and a half. But then, my wife was pregnant at that time when the Tubbs fire happened. So that's why it goes to, about 4 months before that fire. I'm sorry, about... probably 8 months before that fire. It was I was opening for Bouchon at the time, and I was after brunch. I was just tired as hell, and I was like, "Oh, this is a new show called Chef's Table. I'll watch Chef's Table." Watch Chef's Table, and that's where I saw the Guggen episode, right? And the Guggen episode for me was mind blowing because I was like, as a South Asian, I've never seen my food and my traditions on this type of pedestal of fine dining. And two Michelin stars, number 1 in Asia, number 4 in the world at the time. Yeah. And I was like, this is wild. And in his story, the way Guggen gets there is that he, in 1996 or whatever, because that's when people are still writing letters, right? And so he wrote a letter to Ferran Adria and El Bouy. And the story goes is that, that was one of the few letters that Ferran Adria received. It was this Indian chef asking him to teach him how to hunt like a lion, because Ferran was like the lion of
Bangkok.
So it's like I'm watching this go down, and like he writes a letter back and says, come to Spain, bring spices, And so my ass in that moment, I was like, bro, that dude got that with a letter.
Yeah.
Why don't I write an email, And so I poured my heart out onto an email.
I was going to ask, like, how professional was that email?
Not professional.
Because it was post-brunch.
Post, stuff. And so, like, I just poured my heart out in the email, press send, forget about it. And literally months later, we're pregnant. And the Tubbs fire happens, and I'm waking up at 4:30 in the morning to go open, because I was part of the opening team now. And I get on 29, which is the 2-lane highway in Napa. And that's when I was like driving. I was like, this kind of it smells like a barbecue outside. Like, I've never been through a natural disaster, let alone a wildfire before. Yeah. But I noticed that. And then what startled me was I looked up, and the mountains that separate Napa from Sonoma were lit. Like there was a hell behind it.
Oh my gosh.
The whole sky was red.
Yeah.
The moon was red. And then I looked to my right, and it was just a laser beam across the Tubbs, mountain range. And that was the front line of the fire coming from that side.
Wow.
So that's when I realized that there was smoke, and the lights weren't working, and people were starting to freak out on the road. And so I just U-turned it, called my wife. I'm like, pack a bag. We got to get out. We got to go. And so we are rushing back, and it's like, it was so early in the morning is that whoever was out that time started to see the fire stations go off, realizing that the fire was starting, So we rushed back, and obviously you can't inhale this stuff as a pregnant woman because that can cause premature birth and all sorts of stuff, right? So we just packed a bag and we just got out of there. I remember being able to stare at the sun, and I have a picture somewhere, but being able to stare at the sun with no blinking because the smog was so strong.
So hazy,
And so we just kind of got out, and we were hopping hotels for like a week, and we couldn't do that anymore. She was pregnant 8 months, right? And so we had to make a decision on, it was a very, very honest conversation that we had with one another. I was like, where do you want to have this baby, dude? You got to give birth. Where do you want to give birth?
What was she doing at the time? Because you said she was a teacher.
She wasn't a teacher then. She was working remotely for a company.
That's so okay. Yeah, I'm glad it all worked out.
Yeah. We were able to move to Napa because she had a remote job.
Oh wow!
Because
that's something you hear more often these days.
100%.
Remote jobs.
That was the start of it, basically. Yeah. So it just lined up for us to be there.
Yeah.
But that moment was like, she was like, Chicago, because all of our family's here. Her family's here. My family's here. This is where our roots are.
Was there a part of you like, but Thomas Keller?
Yeah,
but Bouchon.
Totally. Yes, absolutely. Part of us was like, we just got here. It's been a year, and there was a lot of great things happening at work. I felt really comfortable. Yeah. I felt really happy. And
did you see a future with like, were you gonna like bounce around in the NorCal area, or like what?
No, I was gonna be there.
You were gonna be there.
It was beautiful. Napa's fucking gorgeous.
Okay.
It's beautiful weather. It's awesome. And I was just there. I was like, I wasn't thinking about anything else, because I hadn't completed my 2 years, right? And in my mind, I was like, I'm here right now.
Gotcha.
I got to accomplish more.
Put in
here,
your time, yeah. Okay.
Because the goal back then is too. It's like if you do well at Bouchon, you get a shot at French Laundry.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
so
that makes
it's
sense.
like I was in that mode. I was like, I want to do that. I wanted to be here. And the ironic thing is, like, my mind I was always thinking about food, and so. Before that moment of like, we are moving back to Chicago, for the past 6 months after being kind of inspired by watching the story of Gagan and all that, I started taking notes and started writing things down in like the little black chef books that we have. And so that's where I came across this culinary tradition called Wazwan from Kashmir, where in one seating, there's 36 courses that come down. And it's like a very holistic, like on the floor, Wazas bring course after course, pickles, rice, food, proteins, veg. And I was like, this is a South Asian tradition. And 36 courses sounds like a tasting menu. And I was like, why hasn't anybody South Asian ever basically reimagined this as a dining experience, but from a more modern, contemporary kind of visible, eyesight of it. So, and so that's where my mind started going. And I started writing about this thing in my book. It's like, if I would do Wazwan, I would do this, I would do that, I would do these dishes, started drawing. So when we returned back to Chicago, the choices were very simple. It was, my wife was about to give birth. I was about to have a son. I applied at Boca. I applied at Let Us Entertain You for sous chef jobs. And I had places that I would have worked at, but it was 90 hours a week. It doesn't matter what the money was, but I was like, do I really want to be an absent father? Do I really want to do this and not be here for my kid being born and being able to support Rida in that, right? In that initial hardest time, especially, we don't have to do shit. We're not the ones giving birth, So it's like the post of that and being there as a father was very important to me. And I remember feeling just that.
Why? Did you have friends that were fathers? Like that were
yes,
new
I have
fathers?
A friend, man. Shout out
at that time. It's like, where did you gain this importance of like, I need to be here for my son?
Yeah, no, I mean, because I remember I have friends that are very close to me, and they were like my friend Gaz. He's gonna geek out because he's gonna be like, why would you say my name? But he's one of my friends that has always supported me in what I've done, and he was the first in our group to have sons and to have not only son or daughter, just have kids. And it really inspired me because I saw that he didn't change who he was, and and he continued to be a father. He didn't have to change who he was. He was still the goofy dude who loved music, loved everything, and did whatever he had to, but he was always there for his kid. He was always nurturing them. He was always taking care of them, introducing them to Bob Marley, introducing them to all these Sunday music when they're like 3-4 years old. And it's really dope because he you know, the joy that he did it from was really inspiring to me. And so I didn't take it lightly when, you know, I found out I was going to have a kid, because I was like, holy crap, father, that's wild. You know, and I remember what our father, you know, my father did for me. And I remember what my father wasn't able to do for me because he was working his ass off all the time. And so all of those things really have always weighed very heavy on that responsibility of being a father, you know, and it really hit me hard, and I did not take that lightly, thank God. And I did something most people would call stupid, which is, how are you going to start a business when your wife has birth, right? And that's exactly what we did. I mean, my wife gave birth, and in the same month I started Wazwan Supper Club as a pop-up restaurant. And it was initially because I was able to be home 5 days a week during the week, and be able to be a father and be there for my wife and be able to take care of my kid and do all the stuff, change diapers, whatever the hell was necessary. But on the weekends, I had my pop-ups 2 days a week. And so it was easy in the sense of like, it allowed me to be home and provide support with whatever I could, but it also allowed me to kind of do this.
How many seatings on the weekends?
We would do 2 seatings.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. We would rent out event spaces, or we'd rent out a warehouse. We were just, you know, this is before any capabilities of talk or anything like that. So I had a Shopify website that I would sell products, and my products were the tickets to the dinner.
Nice.
Just being, you know, South Asian and resourceful with
find
whatever the fuck we have. Yeah. We always have a cousin that can build a website. You know what I'm saying? So, so just kind of doing it that way. And it started to kind of take hold and become more and more popular.
There's always something special about something that's like underground.
Yeah. It was something that we never put the address up. You found out after you bought the ticket the day of.
Right, because it's kind of, it's shifting.
Yeah,
it's nomadic.
We don't know. Yeah. Sometimes there are places where like, we can't do it there anymore. We have to do it here, you know, and we just have to fucking move it, figure it out, and just be resourceful. But what started to happen was people liked it, which was awesome. But the same vibe that we have in Wazwan is the same vibe we have in the Coach House.
Oh,
it's
nice. Being
being that present in the room, storytelling, and being able to be there and having that connection with guests. And that's why Wazwan was so special.
Yeah.
And one night I came back from a pop-up, and it was like 3 a.m, and I was bottle feeding my kid because he woke up, and my wife was asleep. Everybody was asleep, and my phone goes off, and it's a response from Gagan in Bangkok. Wow. And it's sorry for the delayed response.
He apologizes.
It was like it was his team, you know. It was like so long after I sent that, but it was like a very quick, like, you know, hey, thanks so much. Sorry about that, but we have a spot available in July for an externship if you want to come through, you know. And I'm like, baby in hand, bottle.
What month is it at the time?
This is probably around May.
That's coming up.
Yeah, it's May, and it's like in July you can come through. And so I'm like freaking out in my parents' house because that's where we were at the time. And I'm like, damn, like this place responded. Just couldn't sleep. Put my kid back and told my wife first thing in the morning. And I told her, I was like, hey, if you don't want me to go, I won't go. This is crazy. We have a kid that's only 3 months old. If it's not plausible, totally.
But she's heard you nerd out about Gagan, and
and she's worked. She's now at this point, she has seen me work through Jean-Georges, work through Thomas Keller. She's seen the hours and the dedication that I've put.
So she sees that you see the value in this.
Absolutely, but she's also never seen me work so hard in my life. Nobody in my family ever has. From Zubair before restaurant was not this.
And at this point,
it was a different dimension.
Did your parents see how hard you've worked at this, or not yet?
Yeah, they're watching. They know that it's something that I'm not giving up on.
Sometimes I feel like we have to show them rather than tell them, because I just feel like they're not listening.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm showing them today,
right?
Until today, you know. I think at that time they were still like, okay, he's starting his own thing now. Who's gonna pay you? How are you gonna make money? How are you gonna pay this? You know, and it's like, well, I'm doing it by doing these pop-ups, you know. And again, I was like, why would you do that? And it's like, I think for me, the most ironic thing about that is that there's a generation of people that took so many fucking chances, and they're traumatized by those chances. And that's why they care for us not to take as many risks, because they don't want that trauma for us.
Yeah.
But I was always confused by it because I'm like, you're the hardest working people I know. Why do you have a problem with me working as hard as I am working? Because I was proud of that. I'm working very, very hard at that time and still am, so for me, it was like a moment of like, damn, is cooking about to take me to Bangkok, to this magical place, and when my wife was like, yeah, you got to fucking do it, because that goes back to having that support. My parents there, her parents there, all our family, you don't do anything by yourself, right? If I'm not in that situation, I can't go because I don't have the family to support me in doing that. So I packed up and I was able to go stay in Bangkok, and it's like
by yourself.
By myself. Yeah. My roommate was like this Mexican chef from Baja. They gave us like a 300 square foot fucking room with two beds.
Oh, so they helped you in getting a spot.
Yeah. So they give us room and board. We just don't get paid.
Sure.
So we're just kind of like there.
Wouldn't have thought though.
Yeah. They gave us room. They gave us one meal a day.
Close to the restaurant?
Kind of. A 25-minute walk.
Oh, okay.
Not bad. But it was basically, like Bangkok doesn't have like bad neighborhoods in the city. It's like vertical hoods, so it's like the building might be hood, and then right next to the building might be $1 million building or whatever. It's like, interesting. It's huge. It's a city in a jungle.
I've been once, yeah.
It's a city in a jungle, so it's really wild. And again, I loved every aspect of that because being our story of being immigrants and like coming through here and always. Our parents gave us a roof over our heads. Our parents gave us all the comforts that they could. We're still very privileged. Yeah. When we go over, and cooking for me broke all those walls down. They broke down materialism for me. It put me in contact with so many different phases of people who are in different phases of their life and struggling at a different levels too, and different.
Yeah. Whereas at Northern Trust, it was very homogenous.
It's all freaking comb-over white dudes that were talking about their investments, and you know what I mean. Like here, it's like I tell everybody, like it was me and like they had us dispersed throughout this whole building. Like our neighbors to the left was like a family of 8, living in the same space we are. Crazy. Our neighbors to the right were like 5 prostitutes from freaking Colombia who were just there for work. And it was wild living in that building because like nobody looked at them like, oh my God, yo.
Yeah.
No, it was like, how was your day? Yeah. Long. Yeah. My day was pretty bad too. Tough. Hope you have a good one. Like, it's just like when you're looking at all these different walks of life.
Yeah.
If it doesn't make you humble and thankful and grateful for what you have, then you're not a person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And for me, that's what it did. That exposure changed who I am. I wouldn't recognize in a way certain parts of me before this experience.
Well balanced. The humility, but still have the desire to keep going forward.
100%. Yeah. And so that's why Bangkok was about, yes, working at a dream place.
Yeah.
But what I learned about myself being in Bangkok was the unlocking of the next level in a video game in your brain, and that's why I always tell people, I was like, travel when you can. Because your experience and being in a place where you don't speak the language is always going to be such a profound experience. One night we were out and we were in Bangkok. Like the cab drivers don't give a shit, right? So if they don't want to go somewhere because it's too busy, they'll just say no to you on the street. And so it was like 3 a.m. We were all trying to get back to the place after getting out of work, and we just loved walking around at night in Bangkok and eating, drinking, doing all that stuff. So there was a night, it was like the 4th cab driver said no, and I freaked out. Like I just got mad, and I started just going into this dude, and I was like, bro, I have money. I want to pay you money. I just need to go to my apartment. Can you drive me there, please? Like, what is the problem, And one of the chefs, he was from China. He just grabbed me and from my shoulder, and he goes, he's like, stop. He's like, you're being American as fuck right now.
Oh,
I was like, whoa, like that blew my mind. One, because I was like, I've never been called American in my life. I'm Muslim, immigrant, look Puerto Rican, have a beard, and like, everybody has always thought I'm either a terrorist or like I came here illegally. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, this guy just called me American. I was kind of like happy and offended at the same time. You know what I mean? I was like, I've never had anybody call me American before. That was pretty cool. But that was just like, it was such a profound moment in my life because I'm like, word, somebody called me American for the first time, and it was in Bangkok, catching a cab.
Yeah.
You know?
So were you able to reset and like kind of collect yourself?
1000%. That changed me because the next day I learned how to ask for directions in Thai.
Yeah.
I learned how to speak a little bit of Thai, looked up words, looking up kapun kap and saying thank you and being more mindful of like, I'm Indian. Why the hell am I just speaking in English to everybody? Like, what gives me the right? Like, that is an American thing to do, right? And it was hilarious because how it translated on the restaurant side of it was that because of our culture here in the restaurants, we're just go, 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 go.
Yeah.
I would go to the sous chef and be like, here's my list, it's done. And I would start at 8:30 and I would be done by like noon. And they're like, bro, you're here till 4. Stop working so fast. I was like, what are you talking about? And so they're like, you need to make this list last the whole day. And I'm like, I'm not built like that, dude. You know what I mean? It's just like where we come from, it's like go, 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 go. And that's when you realize like restaurant culture is different everywhere.
Okay.
You know, the restaurant culture is not the same, even at the highest places in overseas. They're just like, bro, you're trying too hard. Just calm down. Take your time. Do what you need to do and then go home.
Yeah.
Yes, there's not like they don't have a sense of urgency in what they're doing. But there's no like this overachievement. I think that's like an American thing. You know, it's like we always want to destroy records. We always want to destroy the bar that is set. I don't really have a problem with that.
So why don't they just start later? I don't know. It's like, what?
No, it's weird because, you know, there's still restaurants that have like 25 people working.
Or is there
value?
Is there value in shooting the shit along the way? I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I'm saying. It's more easygoing.
Yeah,
it's more relaxed. It's not like boom, 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 like how we would do.
In the episode, it seems like such a diverse crew.
Very much so.
And so other people are from all over other countries are looking to seek experiences.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's why it was nice. I love that because I was like, this is not the only way to be. You know, you can have some sense of urgency, but also know when to turn it on, right? You can know when to turn on the sense of urgency, but you can also have a relationship. And it's not like me and Jacob come in and we're like, hey, how's it going, chef? All right, cool, boom. Yeah, we're just going. Like, yeah, we know, and hey, what's good, man? How's everything? All right, cool, let's get to it. Boom, that's when it turns on, you know? And I really love that experience because it taught me that. It's like, hey, Gagan was like, you know, that experience was like, don't take yourself too seriously. Like, you got to have fun. This has to be fun because, you know, in the beginning, we're kind of molded by that French brigade system that you all grow up in. And so that's why for me, that was the beginning of breaking out of that system and realizing that, you know, our systems are pretty cool too. And we use a lot of spices and we may not make a fucking bechamel, but like we make 1,000 other masalas that are way more intricate than that, you know? And the realization when you come to is that your grandmas, your moms are as crazy, as talented, and as, you know, stubborn, as creative as any French chef you're going to work for. And they've been doing it for a long time. You know, I've watched my grandma and my mom, you know, measure spices smelling a bowl, not tasting a bowl, not gramming out and weighing something because aroma matters. It's more than just weighing something, right? So that's always been very, very important to me. And it's just been something that after that experience was just kind of instilled in like, have fun. And, you know, continue to do what you're doing and have that sense of urgency, but don't forget to have fun. Yeah.
Sometimes they say don't meet your heroes. But what was it like meeting Chef Gagan Anand?
You're right. You shouldn't meet your heroes. It was cool and it was not at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just, you realize that somebody sometimes, and I think I realized this more now as an operator, even in the past couple of years, is he wasn't the greatest person in person to stages.
Okay.
But he was really good to his people, which I saw. And what I realized though later on is the amount of pressure that somebody like that is under, you know? And so when I had a good experience, when I was like, man, I thought this was going to be like a mind-blowing thing, you know? I didn't get that from that experience. But when you learn afterwards what that person was going through and eventually broke off from his investors and kind of just had to go through some other shit. And then you realize like when you are the number one restaurant in the world, and that's not excuses for being horrible, but just being, you know, not yourself or 100% what people want you to be all the time. It's okay to have a little bit of those downfalls. I think now going through the same thing, it's like,
or at least you understand.
Yeah, I understand, because I'm like, there's times where I'm tired or irritable or something like that. Haven't slept because my kid was kicking me in the chest all night, and you might not be the nicest person to the person you're ordering coffee from. You know what I mean? But
how many stages were there? I mean, is it a revolving door?
Yeah, every season they have stages. So this is a time where all restaurants at this level depend on free labor. They depend on foreign free labor in order to execute what they need to execute.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like, you got at any given moment 5-6 people on staff not getting paid, doing shit for free.
Yeah.
And they're just there. So a lot of that part of the world, I mean, that whole concept is going away, which is, it should.
Yeah.
People need to be paid for their stages and everything and what they do, because it's just so important, But yeah, don't meet your heroes is definitely something that's valid, but I think it's more important to also give some grace to your heroes, man.
Sure.
Because they, we're all human at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest takeaway from that I came up with, I was like, if he's there, there's no reason I can't be there. And it takes your heroes off of a pedestal and it humanizes them. And I feel like that act humanizes you to understand that I can achieve the same level of greatness that I want to achieve.
Yeah.
Nothing is standing in my way, whether you want to do it or not. And what is meant for you will happen regardless of what you do about it,
Yeah, I mean, I think something that you do resonate with is trying to take the torch that's been gifted to you, like that's been handed to you, of what the public perceives to be as Indian food, and making your own, and helping people understand, no, there's so much more to naan and butter chicken and tikka masala.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like just regional.
Yeah.
That is literally North Indian food that is great, amazing, but it also comes from a colonial period, and it comes from pleasing our oppressors, you know. So it's like it's important to realize that, I always tell people India's like going to Wisconsin and the fucking language changes, the religion changes, the food changes, it's like that it's that real.
Regional.
Indiana, different religion, different food, different people altogether. Like India's 50,000 plus years
like
old,
not,
man.
Not just a different dialect, but different language.
Different language altogether.
Yeah.
Everybody speaks Hindi, kind of, but everybody speaks English now. But like each state has its own language. There's like 29 languages in India. Imagine going to like New Mexico. It's a different language.
Yeah.
Florida, though some would say Florida already has a different language, or Louisiana. So it's like it's that different. And so for me, ever since Wazwan, it was always telling that story of Kashmir's dining experience that was Wazwan, because it was so important to tell those stories that are on the borders of India and Pakistan. And really, it's no different than what we're experiencing with other areas like Israel and Palestine, where the British just drew a line and just created borders. And it wasn't for any good. They knew what they were doing when they drew those borders. They knew that they were displacing millions of people across each other, and 1 million people died fighting, and not because of them, but because the British forced them to move and leave 10, 15 generations of land to go across a border because you were Hindu or Muslim. So that drama now is still in India, right? It's the whole Hindu-Muslim thing that's powered by somebody like Modi, who's very right-wing. So it's like those types of situations. What they do is, especially for us as chefs, it's like food has always been evolving in a part of that world because of conquest, because of occupations, before all of these things that are not really great, right? But the crazy thing about food is that historically, food is what gets left behind in all of these geographic areas. So when you go to the north or you go to the south, you see remnants of maybe that was not a great time, but there's food left from it. South Indian food like Italy came from a princess during a peace treaty with an Indonesian king, and way back in the day. And the princess brought with her the concept of fermenting rice, and that's where idlis and dosas came from in the south. And it's just like wild things like that are very political in these days and age, right? have created food and have created food traditions that have existed there for a very long time.
That reminds me of Ethan Lim and
love him.
Hermosa.
Yeah.
And what he's trying to do for Cambodian food.
Absolutely, yeah.
Keeping it alive.
Yeah, 2022, man, I love him. He brought up his mom. Me and him, I had a family meal with him.
Oh, good.
Yep, he came to the coach house one time to eat. This was before we were anybody. And both of us were nominated for like Rising Chef of the Year as Jean Bache.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And he won. I was so happy for him.
I saw the documentary.
Yeah, he brought his mom up. It was so freaking cool. Like my mom wouldn't even attend that shit. You know what I mean? But you know, he's an amazing person. I love him very much. He's cool. Yeah. Such a great soul. But yeah, man, I don't know. It's Wazwan and just the pop-up phase has been always something.
From the get-go though, did you refuse to make butter chicken and chicken tikka masala?
Never. Yeah. I think we made butter chicken for 1 month during the pandemic when we were in a ghost kitchen we've never closed, by the way. Started in 2017. It's just been a constant evolution.
Oh, okay.
And like we were only doing tasting menus for a while, and then right before like about 2019, we got approached by a I Heart Halal festival in Navy Pier that wanted to do casual street food, and they're like, "Hey, you're a Muslim chef," because there weren't a lot of Muslim chefs at the time, or even now there's very few, but. They were like, "Hey, you're doing something cool. You want to do like a street food booth?" And I was like, "No, like I'm doing fine dining. You know, I do tasting menu pop-ups." And but I'm an Indian, so I was like, "Sell food to 30,000 people. Like I'm down. You know, make some money here." New father, right? Diapers are expensive. So very nonchalantly, one of our best dishes at the time was this beautiful scallion corn cake, tandoori fried chicken. Filipino achara of pickled daikon, pickled carrots. We did a spicy honey on top of it. And it was like the anchor of every single, pop-up tasting menu we did. And so very nonchalantly, I was like, fuck it, let's get a brioche bun and put this thing in between and call it a sandwich, and let's call it THC just to be provocative. Tandoori honey chicken. And like I literally went to FedEx, paid like $30 for a board that just said tandoori fried chicken and fries for $12. Bought 500 pounds of chicken, asked the Logan Square co-op to let me prep that the night before there. We all cleaned 500 pounds of chicken, marinated it overnight. And the problem was I couldn't get buns because buns are like, you can't just walk into a bakery and buy 2,000 buns. You have to get a resale license. So having a business, you learn a lot, right?
Yeah.
You learn a pop-up, and you're like, oh, what's a fucking resale license? And so it's like, well, you can't just go and buy 1,000 buns because they know you're going to resell it. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So how do I get this thing? And it was just all these steps. And so I didn't have the capacity to do that at the moment because it was 24 hours out. I just cold called, this is where the cell phone experience came. I just cold called every single bakery. And I don't care if people hang up on me. So finally I found one of the guys who was working with Toronto Baking and just kind of poured my heart out. I was like, bro, I'm a new father. I just started this pop-up. Like I need 2,000 buns or 1,500 buns for this event,
I love that account, by the way, Toronto's account.
Yeah.
Mario just showing us where to eat every day.
Love him. Yeah. So I was like, I just need buns, man. And it was such an amazing, something that I'll never forget, where he's just like, hey, all right, what do you want? And I'm like, I just need buns. And he's like, okay. Go to dock number 5 a.m., bring an empty car and $492.15 cash. I'm like, done. And so I sent my dude in like a Volkswagen Jetta at 5 a.m. with that much money. I was like, just make sure there's no like drug deal happening, and it's actually brioche buns. And we were setting up at Navy Pier for this big day. I bought 9 electric fryers on Amazon that arrived that day, and we're like, we're gonna fire these babies up for 14 hours a day for 3 days. Almost set the thing on fire because of the amount of electricity that was pumping. But my boy honks, and we just saw his face and his 2 hands on his steering wheel. Yep, the buns are here. And his car was just a pallet of fucking brioche buns. And we sold out of everything that day. And that day I realized I'm like, fuck, like I didn't get into this like to sell fried chicken, but I knew that I was like, I'm never gonna stop making this fried chicken sandwich. And we've never stopped making that fried chicken sandwich. And I told people that I was like, this fried chicken sandwich will get us a restaurant, get us a brick and mortar. And shortly after that, the pandemic hits. We can't do dinners, and what made us survive was making tandoori fried chicken in Politan Food Hall for a short period of time, and then transitioning right into a ghost kitchen. A ghost kitchen just to survive.
Are ghost kitchens a thing these days too?
I hope not.
It was a big
They're
thing.
horrible.
They're horrible.
Yeah, there was such a.
Is it a good way to get started though?
Kind of, but it takes advantage of the consumer.
So they take of the consumer or the business?
The business.
Do they take? Okay, so it's a considerable percentage of your business.
Yeah, like you still have to pay rent, but it was egregious. For that rent, you could have a whole restaurant, but they knew that you couldn't have a restaurant, so they charged you that, and then the DoorDash would charge you 35%.
Yeah,
it was wild, but I did it for a year and a half to survive, and I was beat up, like probably physically, just from being unhealthy for that year and a half, just to trying to survive, just to trying to provide jobs for the guys that worked for us, and it was not great, but
was it similar to being in a food hall, or was it?
No, the food hall was fun. I mean, they took 25%, and it was not great, but like I wouldn't change anything about how we came up, because it's like every phase was a learning phase. We introduced ourselves to more people through the food hall.
Right.
It was Friday nights. It would just be like a straight South Asian party in there, because it's like that's what the type of crowds we were pulling in that place.
Certain food halls are more conducive to foot traffic and things like that.
Exactly, and that one was not. And so it was like a miracle that we were pulling that many people to it.
Cool.
So it was really disappointing, because when the pandemic happened that March 14th morning or whatever, they didn't give anybody any heads up. Like, we're not opening. I have 5 guys that work for me. And so there was no stopping. It was like basically taking whatever I had to buy equipment to get into a spot, to Ghost Kitchen, and to just keep it going. Keep it fucking moving, selling food. And the beautiful part about that was all the people that had supported us up till then started sending us notes in the DoorDash comment section of like, don't stop cooking, and was rooting for you guys, and like, supporting by buying our food that we were doing. And that really gave birth to what became, eventually Lilac Tiger, and even the Wazwan initial stage at 1742, because I was supposed to go to a different spot, and I had shown up with a big truck full of stuff to move into that spot.
Yeah, Ukrainian?
On Ukrainian Village, yep. Yeah. And it was like the day after a big snow had happened.
Yeah.
I opened the door, and there was a river flowing out of my space, because a flood had happened, and it was flooding down the furnace. So I walked towards it, saw this waterfall coming down my furnace, and I walked out and told the trucks to leave, because I'm like, we're not moving in here. And then I smoked like 10 cigarettes to calm myself off of probably the first documented personally like panic attack I've ever had, because I was just like, what do I do? But that's where it goes back to what you've been through, because of everything that I had been through up till that point, and even creating Wazwan and working those hours and doing all the crazy shit. It was like a calm sets in of like, okay,
what needs to happen next?
I'm going to call my realtor. I'm going to tell him to find me a place to pop into. And he found me 1742 West Division Street. And I walked in, and it was like a Philly cheesesteaks place with like milkshakes. It looked awful. But he walked me to the back, and he's like, there's a lot of storage room in this place, and opens up the coach house, and it's full of shit, dust. There's a hole in the ceiling. And I'm like looking around, and these walls look really dope. They're old, but there's like everything kind of just like meh, But because of all the warehouses I've been in and all the random places I've done dinners in, my eyes always go to the floor. And I saw that the floor was done. It had some sort of tile on it. And my eyes noticed that there was a banquette underneath all this shit.
What's
to
that?
The right. A banquette's like a long bench seating kind of thing, right?
Okay.
So I was like, there's something underneath here, but I didn't know until I cleaned. So I again, because I was so desperate to start a pop-up and keep money flowing to support the people that I had, I said, yeah, I'll take it, and so we just turn on, this brick and mortar, not really in a pop-up phase, but just kind of turn it on with these collection of, pop-up, like stay, like I love them to death, but we were all like dispersed pirates of like to hire kind of shit. Everybody has full-time jobs where they help out whenever they can type of thing. And we start cleaning out the coach house, and I find the banquette. I start cleaning out the other side, and there's a bar. And so continued cleaning it, and brought tables in, put down 14 seats on the floor, 8 seats at the bar. And I was like, this is going to be Aman, which was the name of the house that my dad built in Chennai. And it was going to be a tasting menu restaurant. to tell my story. And
wait, your dad named a house?
Yeah.
Like what do you?
That's the thing they do in India. When you build a house, you name it something.
That's cool.
Yeah.
People do that with cars here.
Yeah. So they're like every house will have like a plaque, and it'll be the name of the house.
Oh,
So,
that's amazing.
So his house,
and it's kind of like official, like.
No, it's not like official. It's like something sentimental people do.
Okay,
It's like keys in Palestine, right? It's like that's your house, that's your name.
So interesting.
So his name for his house was Aman, which means peace or at peace. Wow. I didn't realize though that Aman was a uber luxury resort all over the world. So I got written about in Condé Nast Traveler. Right alongside Esme and freaking like Rosemary, 3 places you should check out in Chicago. And I'm like, why the fuck is my name next to Rosemary and Esme to begin with? But like I get printed in Condé Nast. That was one of the biggest places that I got printed in. And then Rob Report also prints me. And then I get a really nice cease and desist order from the lawyers of It was really nice too. It was like, hey, we respect your family's traditions and respect your journey here so far, chef, but we own every fucking aspect of the word I'm in and you can't use it for a restaurant. So again, being very on the go, I was like, well, it's a coach house that used to park coaches and horses in it from 1871. Oh, wow. So let's name it the Coach House and just keep this machine moving, cool. And it kind of just clicked and it kind of worked.
Yeah.
And so we ran with it. And in the first 6 months, the Coach House was, I don't know when they came, but like Michelin came through and we were the new discovery in Michelin, and I was like, holy shit, we don't even have like a nice bathroom. You know what I mean? Like it's like still the sushi restaurant bathroom that used to exist there before or something, like it was just wild, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just been that snowball of like, we were always been like the small guy that was doing things that people were starting to notice. And it was really cool to kind of go through that.
It's so wild though, because like sometimes you're moving so fast and your head is so deep down that you're not 100%. Even like looking up to breathe. Like,
never.
Yeah.
I felt like that for a long time.
Yeah.
Probably now is the first time I'm breathing. And it's not like we're making like $1 billion, but it's just having the right people in place, right? Yeah. And that's why people like David are important. And it's like I never had a front of the house presence in that way.
Yeah,
a lot of great people that have worked front of the house for me, but not in that way where I was able to partner with somebody.
But that's the thing.
Be able to do what I need to do and count on that person to do what they needed to do.
David said that you offered ownership.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you don't hear that too often. I see the amount of value you're bringing. Mm-hmm. I hope you have these long-term goals. I want you to be a part of this ride with me.
Yeah.
Would you be interested?
Yeah. I mean, he earned that. I would say he earned that. It's I don't just go out there and have a market fair and give out ownership.
Yeah.
It's something that is very important to me. But he earned that, and it's because of seeing the seriousness of how somebody goes about their work.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's and especially in that phase of my life, I am essentially dragging it all on my back.
I need help.
Yeah. I'm dragging it all on my back. And it's the wild part is even with that, I was, a couple months like before it's just nuts. Like just what you're doing becomes just the norm. Not sleeping becomes a norm. Having 3 hours of rest becomes a norm. You're just doing it. And it's not, I never ever in that time felt, I don't like this. I hate it.
No,
never.
You love it.
It was because of that love.
But there is a cost.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Like, well, how old was your son at that point?
He was, he was about 4. Yeah.
Formative. Every year's formative. It's just like
100%.
Yeah.
The crazy part was he was starting to realize how much I was working.
Oh. And they don't care either. They're like, "Where's Dad?"
Exactly. So that was the biggest thing that even has catapulted, and it also even timed out with David coming on and a lot of other things happening at the same time. That I was like, my kid was like, "How come?" Because I was with him up till the age of 5. Every 5 days a week, we are fucking best friends. I have thousands of pictures of just us being goofy. Mm-hmm. We would just go out into the city. My wife is working, and I would just we'd run around feeding ducks and like doing things that honestly, I never got to do with my dad because he was working all the time, and rightfully so. He was trying to support a family, by himself. Yeah. And so for me, being a father was not against what my dad did, but it was like, I want to be more present and be more there.
Sure.
And so when your 5-year-old's like, why do you work so much? Literally, how come you work so much now, Baba? And it's like, that like shoot me in the heart, And I'm like, he's right. Like, it's time to release some of the reins, you know what I mean? And it's like, trusting people it's tough to trust people in that moment in my life because I wasn't used to
this is your baby.
This is my baby, but I didn't really,
multiple babies.
I wasn't able to trust people because I had a lot of bad experiences as well, so it was actually a very, me and David met when he did like a drink for me when I was in a pop-up phase. We never really like established a connection or anything like that, but we just knew of each other. And then when Wazwan, when he was, waiting for Truce to get completed, because it was taking longer than it was supposed to be. It was a very casual, like, hey man, do you need help, right? And I was like, yeah, do you know how to do payroll, bro? Like, can you do that? And he's like, yeah, I absolutely can. I'm like, oh, cool. Can you do scheduling too? I'm like, yeah, I absolutely can. I'm like, dude, this is fucking awesome. Because I was just like, I love creating food, I love cooking for people and being in that environment. And I was being forced to doing like, I don't know how
other thing, running a business
sheet. Doing all of those things just was starting to get overwhelming because the business was becoming a business. The pop-up was becoming a restaurant, and it needed, we needed skilled people in these positions in order to keep this thing moving forward. So that's why I love David to death, because the universe brought him to me at the right time, and the universe for him brought him there at the right time too, because there's no crash course on small business ownership than being in a fucking small business, and I know that those 2 years in Congoing, what we both have learned together in this journey, we learn something every single day on how to do things better, how to survive things, how to navigate problems and come up with solutions, and we've done it together for the past couple of years, and I would say it's been one of the most fruitful years of my life, because I've woke up one day and dropping my kid off, my phone started going off, and it was my first James Beard nomination, and I was like, I never even imagined being nominated for a James Beard ever, let alone now.
Or at least it felt early too.
Yeah, let alone now. I was like, what? I'm like, that's fucking wild,
Yeah.
And then it happened again the year after. Didn't happen this year, which was kind of wild, but I don't know, maybe we opened up a really dope wild. Restaurant.
You never know. Yeah, I know, right? You never know who's watching.
Exactly, man. And that's what the thing is, you can't cook like people are watching either. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck who nominates us for what. I don't care, to be honest. You can't do it like that, because then people can taste that in your food. People can taste the trying too hard. People can see the trying to go for this, trying to go for that. So I've always been, hey, whatever comes. Whatever is meant for us. I'm a firm believer. I'm not a perfect Muslim, but in our traditions, we always believe whatever is meant for you is written, So whatever is meant for us will come to us, whether we like it or not. It'll come when it's supposed to, So I really take that to heart when navigating what I do every day. And that's why I think it's worked, and it helps to get that. I can never lose that part of me, that madness of me, of being impulsive and going with the flow and going with my gut. I can do it better because I have an operational arm like David to help me execute that decision of being wild. Because if that doesn't happen, then Mira doesn't exist, right? If I'm not like, hey David, I think we should make this a restaurant, it's like, what? Are you crazy? Like, yeah, I think it'd be dope. And like, not only David, and that story is like basically, this was like in the Coach House days. I saw this dude on Instagram, Rishi Manoj Kumar, and I'm like, damn, this guy has a more Bollywood name than I have ever. Kumar is like legendary Bollywood actors.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's a legendary family. I'm like, damn, where is this guy? And it's like working for Rick Bayless. This dude was, running Topolobambo, Frontera, has worked at every single Bar Sotano, like every single phase of that group, and has excelled and has done amazing, to the point that my wife thought he was Mexican, because he's a Indian Singaporean dude, but like the guy loves Hispanic cuisine and is just buried in it and knows everything about it and has so much passion, has the best smile. Like the guy is just on all the time, and so positive.
Is this the
the perception before meeting Rishi?
Absolutely, and it still is. The guy is. Yeah. I've never seen him like, even when he's upset, he's funny. You know what I mean? Like he's just a great dude. Like, and he's full of passion. And so, I very nonchalantly like, hey man, you want to grab coffee sometime on Instagram? Didn't know him, and so we grabbed coffee. We got along really well, and we're just like, we should do a collaboration together, you know? And we're like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. And so we did a collaboration at Bar Sotano. And we created this Chas Agua Chile that's on Mira. And
is Bar Sotano in Mexico or
no, Bar Sotano
Chicago?
is here in Chicago. It's underneath. It's right next to like 3 Dots and a Dash.
Oh, I didn't know.
It's in the same alley, basically.
Okay.
But it was just an amazing dinner. Chef, Bayless was there too. He's like, I've never eaten food like this before. And this was almost 5-6 years ago. And both of us were like, this is something that we should think about eventually, sometime, if you're down. And we were in different positions. You know, he's not, he doesn't have his own business at that time, right? He's working for Chef Rick Bayless, and everybody's going through a different phase in their journey. And I'm in my phase of like, yo, bro, I'm very like, fuck corporate America. Like, you know, take a chance on yourself. You're on this earth once. If you fail, you fail. That's just my mentality of my madness that I love to live with, because I just don't like asking anybody else for permission to do anything. You know what I mean? So it's just when it comes to work and passion, it's like I'm always telling people, and I was telling Rishi, I was like, bro, do your own thing. Do your own thing. Do your own thing. It's a time to do your own thing, you know?
And in the initial coffee meeting, did you get the sense that he wanted to?
Absolutely. And he is he was being told by others too. He's a great chef. He's a talented chef, you know, but it's hard to step out and do that. And it's hard to take that first step. It's difficult, you know, everybody, for me, for anybody, and people have different circumstances too. Right. So it's like, you can't expect it to be easy for everybody to do that. But my mentality always like jump off of a cliff first and figure out how to land on the way down. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm crazy like that. So it's like I'm always like trying to stay connected to my feeling and my feeling when it comes to some food or a dish or anything. And so when he was at Bar Sotano, the beautiful crew of Masala y Maiz came to Chicago to do a collaboration with them at Bar Sotano. And they were like, where should we eat food that's not like fucking butter chicken and shit, you know? And so I was very grateful to Chef Rick Bayless and Chef Rishi's team sent them to Coach House.
Gotcha.
And so we fed them in the Coach House, and they were just like, what the fuck is this? They were just, this is amazing, you know? We connected right away, because it doesn't take much for two Indian dudes to like become brothers. You know what I mean? Like everybody's cousin type shit.
Especially in the culinary industry.
Yeah, you know, and it's like me and Saqib and Norma, like we're all just this is awesome. They're like, you got to come to Mexico City, man. I'm like, cool. Yeah, I would love to do that, you know? So it was like just from meeting them, and that's when I was introduced to this whole idea of China Poblana and like the migrations of South Asians, Southeast Asians to Mexico City, and just like what happens in Mexico, what has happened in Mexico City from a historical standpoint, because up here they don't teach you that, right? Nobody's teaching us that. You know, we're always just fed, this is the land of the free, and this is where everybody comes to live the American dream, you know? And it's like, well, there's a Mexican dream, and there's, you know, everybody has dreams too, you know? And in Mexico City, it was no different. It's 24 million people, and it's thousands of years old, and people have been coming there for a millennia from all over the place.
Yeah.
So to find my wife, she's so smart, and she goes to sleep doom watching TV, right? So she watches Love is Blind. And I remember
guilty pleasure.
David was talking about freaking Real Housewives. And I think that's important for people like that, just because they're so on all the time that they just need to turn off, you know? And she was watching Love is Blind. I can't do that shit, you know? So it's like I'm always in my phone just deep diving into like historical shit. I'm a nerd about that. And I come across a story of a princess that gets kidnapped by Portuguese traders in the medieval kind of time, 1600s or something like that. And she gets set up to get married to a very prominent member of the Catholic Church. And by the time, because she has to go the long way around, by the time she arrives, you know, that person's dead. And so it gets basically absorbed by the Catholic Church. And she starts cooking for the Catholic Church. So basically growing up, you know, as important as it is, she's as important to Mexican culture as she is the first Indian to ever step foot in Mexico City.
Oh, wow.
And so she brings with her fabrics, she brings with her these clothes. So she launches this, you know, revolution of China Poblana, where it's almost like the melding of the, you know, fabrics of each geographical area. She becomes a big symbol in the community. and starts becoming a big philanthropist and like a community symbol of just feeding the people, right? So she passes away. They build her a mural in Puebla, and her name when she passes away, her Christian name is Catarina de San Juan, but her Indian-born name is Mira.
Get out of here!
Yes,
that is so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's why we named it Mira, and not to be two men taking over a woman's story, because that's what we heard from David. But it's I love you, David. But it's being just giving homage to that story, because I think that's really, really cool. But what we decided to do with Mira, and this was from the advice of Saqib and Norma, because they were like, same, all jokes aside, they are right. It's like, how are two dudes going to tell this woman's story, right? But tell your story, and giving her the props of being that person that inspired it, So for us, Mira is the inspiration of this long story of, diaspora and movement and immigration of South Asians and Southeast Asians to this area, not only America, but to Mexico City. And we brought just as much culture, spices, and, fabrics and who we are to that place as well. And so for me and Rishi, that's what we're trying to do with Mira, is tell that story of our diaspora, of our kind of movement throughout the world, and finding ourselves here in Chicago in a really amazing food city, and telling our food stories through that lens as well,
Damn.
And David has an amazing cocktail list to go with it, because he's David. And what I love about it is that every single one of us are represented in that place really well, and it's just crazy, because it's, again, I don't think I do anything that doesn't have context and storytelling behind it. And it's not from I just love to tell stories, but it's historical context of letting people know where things come from is very important to me,
Yeah, and so two things that come to mind are, how do you guys do it all? You can't be it everywhere at the same place. And then no, you're good. And then the second question.
Sorry, my bad. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. The second question.
Stop. It's Ramadan soon. I'm trying to be spiritual, dog.
It reminds me. My wife and I just finished watching Mo.
Oh my God.
On Netflix.
There we go. Sorry.
No, yeah. But the second question that came to mind is, you told a story to Thomas and Andy about a guest that was upset that you didn't drink her glass of champagne.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's any part of you, like, would you bring on an extra help so you can start sharing more stories during the 8-course meal at Coach House? Jacob
does that, and Lee does that.
Oh.
Our other Jacob. What has happened now is that I have also, when you have great people and you tell that story all the time, they're listening. So when we have busy nights, Lee or Jacob or the other Jacob will be like, "Chef, I got it." And I hear them and they got it.
Okay.
And I would have never done that in the past.
Is there some part of you that feels like it has to come from you, though?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I love it because it allows me to be able to, that allows the experience to feel more natural. It's not forced. Hey, chef's going to come by, don't eat. Because when you say chef's going to come by and say something, they don't fucking touch their food.
Oh.
And they'll eat it when it's cold, and then they'll have a fucking 2-star review about how the food was cold. And the chef just wanted to talk the whole time. But we stopped talking. I mean, I talk naturally throughout the whole meal.
Oh, okay.
I try to hit everybody in turns in the flow of service, to make sure everybody gets that attention.
Feel seen, yeah.
But like my crew right now does a really great job of the storytelling. But really the biggest stopping point in the meal is the duck Numidian, and that's the final kind of anchor course of the 8-course menu for the past 4 years.
Wow.
I'm not sure if you've seen the mise en place video that's on YouTube. You should definitely watch it. It's basically
the one that you just put up?
No, yeah, I put it up now, but it came out about 6-7 months ago.
Oh, okay.
But it's like the documentation of how we create this 927-year-old duck dish. And so there was a time early on before David, before everybody, where it was just batshit crazy in the Coach House. Super busy services, and the person running service was like, "Chef, are you gonna walk every single table? Like, are you gonna tell everybody?" And I'm like, "No, turn the fucking music off," And it was a very natural moment where we turned the music off and I whistled like Indians do. It's like, everybody listen to me for 3 minutes. I got you. And I just went on this, for 3 minutes. I'd literally told them what they were eating, where it came from. And the response that we got in that moment was so overwhelming.
Yeah.
It was people just, it didn't matter if they were blackout drunk. It didn't matter if they were having a great time. Everything, they zoned in on the history of this dish, And the brief history of the dish is essentially, it's, starts in Numidia, which is a small little, kingdom on one of the biggest spice roads in the world. And it stretches all the way across Southern Europe and the Middle East, exits what is now Basra, Iraq. And the first landmass you would come across is the southwestern coast of India, the southern eastern tip of India, where I was born. So it's the land of the spices, if you will. It's the, gateway to the east, all of that. And we always take a stab at a certain someone in history who was trying to go to this part of the world, but he went the wrong fucking way here. Came here and named all the brown people he saw Indians, But Numidia was special because it was in a Muslim Spain, and it was a big Christian population, a big Jewish population, but a big global trade influence. And so this condiment that we put on the plate that comes from this book that we found this recipe in is a really great kind of snapshot of everything involved there. So it's cumin seed, coriander seed, dates, pine nuts, finished with a red wine vinegar and a dash of fish sauce in this fucking recipe.
That's cool.
And what the fuck is fish sauce doing in Spain 1,000 years ago in a Jewish, Muslim, Christian kingdom? And that's where it tells you how much trade we have been doing with Southeast Asia at the time. And it really kind of, it brings everybody in. Everyone is just like, I've never seen a room, every time I talk to this dish, I never get tired of it. There's some rooms that don't give a shit, but most of the time, everybody gives a shit.
Yeah, you have their full undivided attention.
Full undivided attention, and it's playful. It's tipping on. I'm a very unapologetic person about talking about the times we live in and everything like that. So it's very important for me to be very upfront about who I am and what I believe in. And so right now, it's really ending that dish and that story, but saying, hey, in a world that needs to be reminded of its humanity today, that food is what brings us back to square one,
Yeah.
And that's why I can't just exist in a world where I just make fucking pretty food and give it to somebody to eat. It's like everything's got to have an importance of it. Everything's got to mean something, because if you follow the dish coming on your plate, it's somebody who prepped it, somebody who raised that duck, somebody who fed that duck, somebody who marinated it, somebody who couldn't feed it.
Oh my God, there's so many levels to it.
Somebody that touched it at so many, different phases.
But then the history.
And then the history of why it's even freaking there. It's just wild. I found that book because during Delta virus in 2021, we had a server come in and she was like, Chef, I'm either hungover or I have COVID. I'm like, well, you should probably go home, And she had COVID. And it sounds weird, but I'm kind of thankful she did, because it shut down the restaurant towards the end of that December. And I was in the worst moment of my life in that moment, because I had to refund $29,000 in revenue.
Oh.
And because I had buyouts, everything set up to end this year, right? New Year's Eve, all this. And I was sitting on a sack of potatoes in the basement, returning all this, refunding all this money.
Oh my God.
And trying to think about, how am I going to come back in January 1st? Can I even pay rent? Can I even do anything? And that's when you learn something. You're like, I'm going to ask the landlord for an extra 10 days. Never thought about it. Called the landlord. I was like, I can't pay rent. I just got closed down because of COVID. Everybody caught it. I'm going to have to quarantine for 10 days. He said, okay. I'm like, oh shit.
There you are asking again.
So you can ask for not paying rent a little bit late so I can survive, man. And I never even thought that was an option before that moment, right?
Yeah.
But I'm in quarantine and I can't sit. And so I'm just literally have every single book I have just to keep feeding my mind and trying to get my mind off the fact that I just refunded about $30,000 of revenue. And how am I going to pay people? How am I going to keep people? How am I going to do anything? And in my research, I come across this fucking book, and it's 175 recipes from medieval Islam. And I'm like, I'm Muslim. I never even knew we had recipes from medieval Islam still here. That's when I started to think about how deep our religion is that Islam and Muslims and even Jews or Christians or Buddhists, every single religion is as intertwined with spirituality as they are with the food that they eat every day. It's that important. where kingdoms and everything spent more time, kings spent more time in the kitchen sometimes because they were so obsessed with food in a lot of, Muslim world kind of situations where there was accounts of kings, royal feasts and all this sort of stuff. But I think it applies to every person across the face of the earth, and so when looking through this book, you see things that are very similar to what we eat here. They started to, explain things like a tahrid, where it's basically, okay, take a cast iron pan, layer it with a pastry dough, fill it with a 4-hooved stew and the juices of the meat and the kind of the shorba is what we say. It's like the sauce, right? And then you seal it again with a pastry dough and bake it at 1,000 degrees. I'm like, that's freaking chicken pot pie, dog. You know what I mean? Like that is the first waves of Spanish quote unquote food that comes to the West, right? And it's like Muslims had a big thing to do with Spain, and we're not taught that in our history, right?
Yeah.
The Muslim existence in the Western world has been erased and kind of dumbed down to now, but they can't erase it because there's too many of us, right? And so for chefs, it's telling that story as well, is that we've been part of Western society for a very, very long time. And when I found this book, it was like a calling when I was like, I have to make this dish. And so when I came across this dish, I was enamored by it, and I put up 2 months of dinners on talk, and within a week and a half, we sold out. And that was the lifeline that helped us continue on in 1742. So it's like and this is pre anybody that works with me now.
Yeah.
And if those times don't happen, we don't exist. So it's like, when going back to the whole, how we met with Rishi and everything like that, there was kind of that moment where when we found this really dope history, I was like, yo, let's tell it in the coach house. So during the weekdays, I would do Mira dining experience, right? And Rishi was in Miami at the time, and I was keeping him in check. I'm like, hey, I'm going to try it out. Let's see what happens. And so we were both collaborating throughout, like, hey, let's do this, let's try that. And, things happened like while I'm here, he's working, I'm doing things on the fly, like lamb barbacoa biryani, and like things like that. But that dining experience started to take hold, and things like, just things started to naturally feel really, really good.
Wow.
And even that dish is like, when we were in Mexico City, the last day that I was with Norma and Saqib, they were like, we got to take you to somewhere before you leave. And anytime a chef says that, you get in the fucking car. And they take me to this small little town, Texcoco, where she grew up. And, all your senses are attacked, right? Because you're driving in a very old place, and you realize that the people in the mountains have been hiding themselves using the natural vegetation of the mountain from the valley, right? Because of all the countless conquistadors and all sorts of invasions that have happened. And so it was one of the best moments of my life. One, because I had my kid with me, and he was about 5.5, 6 years old. My wife was with me, and we're going up this mountain, and it's, challenging all of your senses. You can't see anything, but you start to hear music. You can't see anything, but you kind of start to smell food.
Oh.
You still don't see anything. You realize you're somewhere because you see a big white cross. Sure, you're somewhere, and it's a village. But it's like slowly your sensors are being fed that there's life here. Yeah. And then you park in this gravel parking lot, and there's a little cutout in the vegetation, right? And you're like, okay, where are we? But when you get out of the car, now you smell everything. You hear music, you hear laughter, you hear kids, you hear life, And we walked through that entrance, and it was I'll share the picture with you after we're done with this, but it was literally opened up into a massive street market, where the roof of the street market was the natural vines of the mountain that were being held up by these poles, you know. And when your eyes just kind of scan, and my 6-year-old at the time, basically, he goes like, Baba, can we just stand here for a second? And I'm like, absolutely, man, because I knew that for me, one, as a father, I was in a full circle moment of like, he's here with me. And one of the biggest moments of my culinary career, like,
yeah, glad to know that.
Right?
Good. I'm glad they got to go with you.
And we're scanning scanning our surroundings. There's somebody making tortillas fresh. You hear that, you smell that. There's the big thing in Mexico too is like grilling rotisserie chicken over coals, but the chicken fat drips on a bed of potatoes and like jalapenos. It's the best like $3 you'll ever spend in your life. Mezcal always has to be in like a red igloo water cooler, because if it's not real mezcal. But then the soul of the mountain is these 8 or 4, I'm sorry, in-ground massive ovens that are brick. And they're cooking lamb and beef barbacoa 24 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
Wrapped in agave leaves, wrapped in banana leaves, wrapped in avocado leaves, spiced, and you smell that. You hear it. You hear all of that. You hear the chopping of it. And so that whole scene was just like, man, how do you bring that back to Chicago, you know? But for us in India, we also have very rich traditions. And so when we came back, we started to build the lamb barbacoa the way I saw it, but we started to introduce Indian spices into that mix. And we were like, what tradition stands up to that than dum biryani? You know, dum biryani is a massively rich tradition that came from the Persians through North India, and now India owns it and Pakistan owns it because we do it, you know, basically differently in every single community. But we started to make yakhni, which is the sauce of the biryani, using Mexican chiles, you know, so folding in morita, pasilla, guajillo, like we're kind of melding these two cultures together. And when we plated that first one and we walked into the coach house with these, how they serve it as miras, how it's always been served. I brought back the clay pots from Oaxaca, and when people saw that walking in, it was the faces, right? That's when I knew that this needed to be...
It's playful too, you know?
Absolutely. But this needed to be somewhere, you know? And so like moments like that, what are we going to do? Are we not going to do it?
Right.
We got to do it.
I mean, was anyone on the fence still?
Yeah. I mean, like you got to figure out money. You got to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
So it's like when I'm like, hey guys, I think we should open this thing. And they're like, how are we going to do that? I'm like, we'll find the money. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? we'll do it. You know, it's like, cause like, hey man, let's give ourselves some credit. We're not nobodies anymore.
Yeah.
We have done some things, and I'm sure people would want to support that. You know, one of the best calls I love to make to people is when I call people to quit their jobs, you know?
Yeah.
And when I called Rishi to quit his job, I was so happy. I was like, quit your fucking job, get the fuck back here. Let's do this thing, you know? And we all three of us, you know, collectively just put together the right people that have helped us bring Mira to life. But it doesn't exist without the initial, let's fucking do it, you know? And I think that's the important part. We can never, I tell my wife, I'm like, I'm never retiring. Like in the sense of like
no, you're living the dream right now.
Yeah. Like I want to cook until I die, dude.
Yeah.
I really do. Whether I'm the old guy on a beach, hopefully somewhere, and like the old guy telling the stories of what I'm doing and nobody fucking believes me, I don't care. I just want to cook for people, make them happy. Maybe my son will come visit me on the beach from time to time. But, you know, just not cooking is like not an option, you know? It's weird.
Do you think there'll be a time where your son will hang out with you in the restaurant?
Oh, he's been with me the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, when we used to prep, it was in my kitchen, my house kitchen. My wife hated me at the time because we would two of my cook's friends and us were just in a house kitchen prepping like 100-person dinner. Our house refrigerator is like half delis and half real life, you know, like blenders are being used and fucking loud. And she's like, can you get a fucking kitchen? This is getting stupid, you know? But like all the while, my kid's always been crawling around, walking around. Every pop-up, he's been there, ringing bells.
Yeah.
He's seen it all. He thinks the chefs are superheroes.
Yeah.
He thinks they're like celebrities. You know, when he meets like my cook, who's the newest, hasn't done shit cook even, he'd be like, yo, that's Baba's cook, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he has respect for them because he sees
so cool.
me doing what I'm doing, and he watches that. Kids are so...
Well, it's going to be so fun to have that conversation when he starts exploring what he wants to do.
Oh, 100%. That's already happened now. Right now it's basketball player because he's obsessed with the NBA. But, you know, that's another full circle.
That's
moment.
awesome.
Like, it's not like, hey, you should go become a doctor. I ask him, what do you want to do? You want to play basketball? I'm like, cool. You know how hard that is?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You need to start.
Could be the first.
But do you know Steph Curry shoots fucking 1,000 shots an hour? He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, no, you think he's going to walk into the NBA?
Let me get started.
Yeah, because you're so innocent, right?
Yeah.
He was like, Baba, you played in the NBA, right? I'm like, no, dog, I'm Indian 5'8", dog. I'm Muggsy Bogues. I'm not even Muggsy Bogues, right?
Yeah,
I'm Muggsy Bogues' height,
yeah.
skill level. Get out of here, you know?
Yeah.
We play cricket and ping pong, and we're just shooters, basically.
So that being said, have you been able to bring your parents or your dad to a Bulls game?
No, unfortunately not. Dad's getting a little older. Mom is a diehard Bulls fan, you know?
Oh.
The origin story of why we are even Bulls fans is wild, because when we were living in Doha It was the First World War. It was 1991. And during wartime, all of the channels would become CNN, you know? And so there was a time where there was an alert happening because Doha had an Air Force base of the U.S. We were under threat of an attack. And so all the channels go down, there's sirens, all this stuff or whatever. And I remember we're just being, you know, you distract kids by watching TV and just kind of changing channels and stuff like that. And I came on Star Sports, which is the international sports channel. And it was for the first time where I was like, what is this? And it was Bulls versus Lakers, 1991. And I was like, and naturally what 90s babies do is we pop in a tape and start pressing record off the TV so we can show our boys tomorrow, hey man, I found a new sport. It's pretty freaking cool. Number 23 is pretty awesome, you know? So I watch basically going up with the right, finishing with the left. And that's what it did something for basketball for me in that moment. You know, I loved I'm a diehard Bulls fan, diehard basketball fan, diehard Michael Jordan fan. And that was like oh my God, I need to show everybody what I just saw. And all my boys, we showed it. We built a hoop the next day with wood and fucking wrought iron ring and all this shit, and started using soccer balls to shoot. And if you missed, it would go like 20 yards, you know what I mean? But like we got obsessed with basketball. So like during our whole immigration process, we were denied in 1991. But then we waited again. And in 1996 season, and during the second three-peat, is when my dad walks in one day and says, we're moving to Chicago. And I was like, where did you say we're moving to? And he's like, we're moving to Chicago. And I was like, I prepped my 7-year-old to move to Lisle from like Chicago recently.
Did you have a jersey already? Did you have sneakers already?
I can't afford that shit, bro. Crazy? No way. But, you know, I was like, wait, we're moving to Michael Jordan. I didn't give a shit about Chicago. I just knew I was moving to MJ, you know?
You ever make it to the Grant Park celebrations?
No, I was too young. But I did make it to a Spurs game when he was playing in 1998. That they blew him out like by 40.
Oh, wow.
I've been to many Rose games, obviously. But when we came to this country, like my mom's always been a sports person as well. Growing up, she played handball and all that. She was a tomboy. So she fell in love with Michael Jordan as much as I did. And we would watch Bulls games together growing up, you know.
Did you guys nerd out on The Last Dance?
I did, yeah, man. And she, you know, she thinks Jordan can do nothing wrong, you know. She doesn't know his gambling side and the smoking side and all that. But it was just coming here and realizing I was in Chicago was like a Chicago Bulls moment. And then, you know, for me, like the whole mentality, the Jordan mentality that becomes the Mamba mentality. Yeah. That's really the mentality I feel like because of that exposure has become a very big part of how I look at things and how I work through things of, you know, taking that chip on your shoulder when people think they don't believe in you. Taking that chip on your shoulder when people say you can't do something.
There's definitely aspects of it that I see, but there's definitely a softer, more empathetic side as well.
100%. Yeah, and that comes with growing old and becoming, in the sense, not old, but I'm saying just growing older and becoming more mature and realizing what's important, you know. And it's like you can be that general, but you don't have to berate your people like Jordan did during, you know what I mean? And so it's like finding that balance is something that is so important. Yeah. But I feel like, you know, we got to give ourselves some grace. I think we're doing a really great job of it. Yeah. Yes, is there, you know.
Like you demand excellence by leading by excellence.
Exactly, man. Yeah. And that's what we learned from Mamba. And that's what we learned from Jordan is that you're never going to ask somebody to do something that you wouldn't do. Yeah. Right? Or you can't do. Because that's when you lose them as a leader, you know? And I've taken that to chest, like with everything, you know, there's nothing in the restaurant that I can't do. Right. And that's how it should be. And I think in every level we can lead like that with empathy and with compassion. And that's how you get that team mentality of really having people that are going to care about things, even at 90% of what you care about it. You know? And you can go very far that way.
Yeah. Zubair, that's all I had for now. I feel like we can talk for hours.
I know.
It's already a little over 2 hours.
Yeah.
So we'll call it at there.
For sure.
If someone's not already following you, where can they follow you?
Follow me at just Zubair Mohajir on Instagram, at Zubair Mohajir. Of course, at Lilac Tiger, at Coach House and Mira are our businesses. We didn't even talk about Top Chef, but...
I mean, you said, what can you talk about with Top Chef?
I'm on it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun. But just to capture everything, it was a really great experience. But
Okay.
I'm gonna be releasing actually a really awesome YouTube channel where we're gonna be kind of taking a little bit of what I do in the Coach House and in Lilac and that storytelling aspect of it, and really putting it out for the world to see and giving people a little bit of an insight on what we do and how my mind works in the kitchen, and kind of following these historical recipes. So definitely Chef Zubair on YouTube is where you can follow that.
Okay.
More details to come for sure.
Okay.
But man, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
This was amazing.
I was honestly a little nervous. I was a little nervous. Only because you've done, your previous interviews were so good. It's just like, damn, I don't want to just repeat shit for him. Like, but this was great.
You did a great job. This was awesome. You asked the right questions.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time, we'll see ya.